Hello, everyone. We're live. Hi,
Hello.
Leo.
How are you, Noah?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there. It's been a day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Mondays are hard. Even though I don't have a 9 to 5 job, but I don't like Mondays since I was a kid.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I'm not a big fan either, but sometimes you just got to work your way through the week.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to this live stream. I'm Noah, and this is the Perceptions of Injustice. I have with me a very special guest today, Leo from 544 Camp Street. Is this how you say your channel's name?
Yep. You got
544.
it.
Yes. So I think we both, me and Leo, go on the same direction as to we both speak about the Dan Markel case. I think that's what brought us together in the first place. I had a live stream with him on his channel last week. And yeah, we decided to do this now, which is we're gonna deep dive into Reddit, the community of Dan Markel murder, and just chat about the threads that's there. I think all of us do that. I think all of us at one point will look into Reddit and see what's going on, what's new. So we're just gonna do it together this time.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the Dan Markel murder subreddit is one of the better true crime communities that's out there, and so yeah, it's a great resource, and I love diving in there. So I'm so ready for this.
Yeah. Um, I'm wondering if because I see 9 people watching, but there's no comments. So I'm wondering if I have a problem with it or
Hmm. Yeah.
can you hear us well? Can you see us well? Can you
Hmm.
let's see. Let me open the
Yeah. I might open another tab just to YouTube just to check
right.
it.
Just check it out.
Yeah.
People are talking. Why I'm not seeing the chat?
Maybe if
Ah,
we opened up another YouTube window, we could just sort of
I'm
see like the delayed chat. Oh, there we go. Wait, no, there was one on screen there.
No, yeah, this
Oh,
is not just a second because it says
sure.
here that
Yeah.
it doesn't open for the comments doesn't open for when it's private, but it's not private. So I'm wondering what's going on. But I can
Hmm.
see people commenting. So I'm okay. Let's see where do I find the
Oh, you know what? If you open up another tab to YouTube, which I have done,
mm,
just to like the actual live stream and just mute it, you can see the comments on the sidebar there, and then we can
okay.
comment as well. And I see Helen Stewart saying hi, Matthew Newton saying hello. Helen Stewart, yes, thank you for letting us know, Helen. I really appreciate that. And Matthew, okay, so we've got three confirmations. All right.
Okay, great. Hi, Helen, Matthew, and Cherry.
Cherry. Yeah.
Great. Everyone can see us and everyone can listen to us. Okay, great. Hear us. Okay.
Beautiful.
Uh, should we start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm down to go, and I mean, I think the great thing about live streams is, people plug in later. They can, always start from the beginning if they want and catch up later. So,
Yeah.
up to you. But
Okay.
yeah.
Sure. Okay. So we have me and Leo. We chose some threads that we thought were interesting to talk about. The first one is I have never seen a fall from grace like Charlie Adelson's. And it says, I don't think I have ever seen anything like what Charlie has gotten himself into. I mean, you really have to think about it. He is driving around a car that could be down payment for on a $1 million house. He has many girls to date. At one time, he was making $3 million a year. He worked the schedule he wanted to. He had a place on South Beach. He traveled the world and could afford whatever he wanted. Now he is in a place with no freedom that one government official deemed unfit from human habitation and is considered one of the worst prisons in Florida. Whoa. And he killed someone who had no direct impact on his life or lifestyle. It was all to appease Donna.
Hmm. Yeah, this is such a fun thread because we were discussing a little bit beforehand, but it gets to the heart of like the family dynamics of the case, which are
Mm.
so interesting. I mean, I think we all sort of relate on some level to having folks like this in our life, maybe not to this degree. And there's also a lot it's typical of a Dan Markel murder subreddit thread because it has lots of fascinating discussion that goes in all sorts of different directions. Like this first comment by Frederick Abilene mentioning the Alec Murdaugh case. Alec Murdaugh would like a word, which is an interesting comparison because the Murdaugh case is also similarly hard to decipher, you know?
Yeah, is he saying that Alex Murdo also fell from grace very hard? That's what's
Yeah. First of all, I want to say hi to Grish in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. And I think I'm kind of interpreting here, but I think what Frederick is saying is that like the Alec Murdaugh case is also very murky because Alec Murdaugh killed his wife and son to basically like buy some more time to like run his sort of Ponzi scheme or whatever. He was stealing money from like his clients and stuff like that. So it was like very hard to understand for I think normal folks why Murdaugh did it. And but I think you also sort of touched on something interesting in that like there's a number of different levels where you can look at it. I mean, there may be other similarities besides that. Um,
yeah. Um, so Weinstein's another one.
yeah,
Harvey
yeah.
Weinstein, Alex Murdo, Elizabeth Holmes. Yes, Elizabeth Holmes. I
Oh,
like.
did you do the Theranos deep dive? Have you ever read about that?
I did. There was a period of time where I was obsessed with Elizabeth Holmes and
Yeah.
everything related to it. She's something. I mean, she changes skin just like she needs to.
Yep.
It's very interesting for me that after her conviction and her sentencing, she like changed her whole persona into being, she's not Elizabeth anymore. She's Liz now. And,
Yes.
and she's a mom, and she's, just living life in the parks and with family and stuff. Like she changed her whole persona. Just like, who she reminds me of. She reminds me of, what was her name?
Wendy or because it's so funny because Grish on his channel has a short where he face morphs Elizabeth Holmes into Wendy Adelson, and it's like kind of they have like the same sort of like super bright blue eyes, so it's a very effective edit.
Right.
But it's
Yes.
just a
Oh,
short.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's that is like a great comparison because I think they do have like a similar thing going on, like this insane self-confidence in their self-image. Yeah, I did a deep dive on Theranos as well. I read all of John Carreyrou's work, the guy that wrote the book Bad Blood, and the guy that broke the story for the Wall Street Journal. I really am a fan of his writing, and I wonder if he's actually French or at least part. So he spent some time over there. So I wonder if you may have encountered him in the French language press or something like that. But he's an interesting fellow. Have you
Yeah.
ever read his stuff at all? The Wall Street Journal guy.
I haven't, or maybe I did, but I don't.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
didn't stick or something. I don't know. Like I forget sometimes names that
Sure.
isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote this sort of Bible of the case. It's called Bad Blood. It's a book that just gets like all the details of like the early history of Theranos. Because Liz Holmes is sort of typical nepo baby, or her parents are from like a wealthy stock. She comes from the same line as like the Fleischmann yeast fortune. So there's a really interesting history there, which I always love to get into.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right. I think someday we should do a live together on Elizabeth Holmes. She's very interesting to me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But going back to Charlie,
Yep. Thanks for getting us on track.
falling from grace. Yes, I think he did fall from. I mean, imagine that he was. I couldn't have said it better than this person, X-Man 719. Actually, he had everything. He was living in heaven. He was living a luxurious life, the best life that he could have, and then everything. It's two extremes. It was like when he was high, he was very high, and when
Mhm.
he's low, he's at his lowest. I don't think there's any lower than this he can get. And it was all an emotional drive to do that, which is Donna, Donna's approval, Donna's love, Donna's he really wanted to replace Wendy in Donna's eyes.
Hmm.
But and even though he had everything, he still was missing something, which is Donna's approval.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's what I have to say about this.
Yeah, that's such an interesting take, and it just rings very true to me. So, and I think that this just sort of highlights how powerful the dynamic of like of your family is, and like beyond all sort of rational reason. And there's just no, it just doesn't make any sort of sense except for if you understand like the power of the pull of like feeling belonging to your family, and
Yeah,
it's a wild dynamic.
yeah,
Hmm.
right. It is a wild dynamic.
Yeah, I think because we all kind of like want our parents' approval, and it's very understandable on some level, but to this degree is like it just highlights
Yeah, I think there's two kind of criminals. There's the smart ones, and then there's the stupid or dumb ones. And I think Charlie is from the other
mm,
part.
mm,
Um, so, okay, I understand that he wanted to appease to Donna, but the way he did it, it's very, in my opinion, it's very dumb. How he, how he did it. And yeah,
yeah, he wanted to appear street smart, but he really wasn't from that world at all, and it's pretty apparent. And I think that shows up in really interesting places. And uh, in Grish's series, for example, Wendy's Television, he gets a lot into just these exact sorts of questions, motivations, and like, and also just the whole television alibi only really makes sense if you like don't understand how television repair works. Like you don't have to deal with like those sort of like minor problems that you, oh, and awesome, now I see that the comments are showing up in the actual
right.
StreamYard
Yes.
window. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so great. Anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, it's yeah, there's just a lot of interesting depths to plumb. Hi, Matthew Newton.
The German word for this concept is Schaden.
Schadenfreude, I believe.
Okay.
Schadenfreude.
Okay, thank you, Leo. Which is the tendency for people to find enjoyment in the suffering of others. There is an enormous amount of
Schadenfreude.
in the Dan Markel case.
My German's not good, but I love those kind of German words. Do you
Yeah.
how have you ever uh, gone to Germany or anything like that? I spent some time in Berlin.
Yeah, I have been to Frankfurt, but just
Mm.
like for a day. It wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't that much, yeah.
How
But
like if you were just listening to like German television, how much do you think you could pick up?
nothing,
Oh,
honestly.
okay.
It's hard for me. The German
Mm,
is hard for me. Like I think, for example, Spanish is much easier for me to. I don't speak nor understand, but I think I can pick up some words when someone speaks in front of me.
yep.
Yeah, but not German.
Yeah, I really love Spanish. It's the language I know best next to English because I spent a few months down there in like an immersion program. And I love the logical nature of Spanish. Like the rules just always apply. It's not like English. Like English is so messy.
Yeah,
There's so many different like weird rules, and yeah,
yeah. I think Spanish is like French, right? Like the
similar.
you're
Yeah,
similar to it. Yes, the grammar and everything.
very similar. Yeah. I mean, I don't know French that well, but yeah, yeah.
Um, Katrina says it's way beyond, in my opinion, the Idelsons must win at all costs. Yes, right. They must.
That was one of my favorite. There's so many great gems from Jeffrey Lacoste's stuff, but one of my favorites was the Adelsons hated Dan like it was a sport. You know, like it was like their hobby.
Yeah, that's their hobby. They're always gossiping about him and talking bad about him. Yeah. What a hateful family.
Yeah, it's like such a. It just the things that people are preoccupied, I think, are like incredibly revealing. You know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Should we go to the next thread?
Yeah, we could. I think we did a good bit on that one. That was fun. I think this is working well. I'm really happy that the technical stuff is all
It's all good, yeah.
sorted. Yeah, this is great. I'm having a lot more fun than the first stream, which was stressful.
It's we're practicing. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, this is yeah, I'm really excited about the potential of covering Donna's trial, so in
Yeah,
September.
me too. Let's see. Just a second, okay? Because I have
Sure.
to.
I'll say hi to Katrina in the chat and Yurts and things. Thank you very much for stopping in. Lots of great comments for and True Crime Wifey always in the live. I so appreciate you, True Crime Wifey. So, oh hi, Helen Stewart. Oh, okay. Well, I am glad that you're here. Ah, now we're to the
Just a
two.
second. Present. Share screen. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Josh Dubin gets prisoner free after serving 25 years, brings him on GRE only for him to get caught with body parts in freezer.
The Joe Rogan experience for folks not familiar.
Yeah, yeah. Josh Dubin, through his Innocence Project, was able to get a man who served 25 years in prison free last year named Sheldon Johnson. Both men appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast last month, episode 2096. Johnson was found with human body parts and remains in his freezer yesterday. Good job, Josh. You used all of Charlie's X on people who listened to the podcast and freed a murderer from prison who didn't even last a year on the outside before murdering again.
I wonder what he meant by used all of Charlie's X's. I think he means scratch, like money. I think that's what he means. Used all of Charlie's. That's sort of an odd way of
Right.
putting
What
it,
is
but
this? I don't know.
yeah, I think that's what he means. I think that's what it means. But yeah, I mean, it's such a it's something I haven't looked into like a ton, like the specifics of that case, the Sheldon Johnson case. But I am like pretty familiar with the Innocence Project, and yeah, the whole movement for false confessions is it's such a tricky area because forensic science has been so flawed until very recently, and it still has its issues. So I think this thread is interesting because it highlights those sort of issues, where even somebody like the Innocence Project, who seems like they would be just totally like a good force. There's some interesting criticisms of the Innocence Project that I think are valid.
Yeah. Do you want to talk more about it? Do you want to tell me more about it? I'm not very familiar with this, but I would love to know.
Sure. Well, I mean, I kind of have a long relationship with reading about forensic science because I've worked on a lot of cold cases. I worked in criminal law for about a decade up here in Alaska, and now I work, as a paralegal, like editing legislation and stuff like that. There's in the 80s, there was a lot of cases in Alaska that got kind of messed up with bad forensic science because the FBI did all of our forensics here in Alaska until fairly recently because Alaska didn't have a lab of its own.
Mm.
And so the FBI labs in the 90s were like impossibly corrupt. Like they were doing all this different weird piecemeal forensic science. For example, the one I'm most familiar with is called hair and fiber microscopy, where where these examiners would, especially these FBI agents, would like compare an unknown hair and like a known hair, and they'd say, this is this guy's hair because I've looked at so many hairs. I know hairs like super well. But it was just a sort of faulty, it wasn't a good science. It wasn't based on good scientific principles because there was like no real way of calculating like an error rate, for example. Like you couldn't really tell like how sure you can be about their match, for example. Like with fingerprints, it's a lot, or DNA, it's a lot easier to be able to give you like an error rate in terms of like the mathematical probabilities that there's an error.
Mm.
So it's just that sort of stuff. And the Innocence Project has been involved in trying to get wrongful convictions overturned. It has a really interesting history. The guys that founded it are Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, who you may remember from the O.J. Simpson case. They were the DNA experts on O.J.'s Dream Team. So there's just such a sordid, interesting, layered thing going on there with the
Oh
Innocence
my God.
Project. Yeah, and anyway,
So
it's
the
just something.
reputation is coming before them to the Innocence Project. So when that's,
And the other
yeah,
thing that sort of gets messy is there's a lot of franchises of the Innocence Project. Like there's an Innocence Project in Los Angeles, for example, that recently took on the appeal of Scott Peterson, the
yeah,
guy who was convicted of killing his wife in the Bay Area, I believe, somewhere in California. That was a real big case in the tabloids, and so that people have been very critical of the Innocence Project for taking on a tabloid case like that because it's not really like true to what their mission should be, which is helping people with no resources.
right. Yeah. I mean, I knew about the Innocence Project before. I always thought about it to be a nice organization. Oh, it's nice to have an organization like that, for fairness and stuff. I didn't really look into it, but when they took Scott, is it Peterson? Scott
Yep.
Peterson. I was really surprised. It was for me as if they took Casey Anthony and they
Yeah.
said, "Oh, it's very obvious. Everybody knows about Scott Peterson. It's it's case closed for real. There's nothing to talk about more about in this case." And when they took it, I was like, "Oh, okay. It's probably all about the money." Then I was naive.
Or the PR. I mean, that's the other thing is like sometimes these people, I can't really speak to their motivations. I could just speculate because I don't really know the specifics that well. But the other thing that I would say as a possibility is like they may be taking it so they get their name out there so that, that it's essentially like a long route to getting more money because with PR, you can, if you have good public relations and good your name is out there in the press for good things. And that's the other thing I want to emphasize is like the Innocence Project has done a lot of great work in the past, certain branches of it. There's a
Mm,
branch of the Innocence Project up here in Alaska, for example, that's done really good work. They got to a group of men who were wrongfully convicted called the Fairbanks Four out of prison. So like they've done a lot of good things, but it just kind of gets sticky when they start taking on cases like this. I think it sort of um, imperils the whole mission, in a
right.
lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True Crime Wifey says Josh Dubin wasn't worth the money after hearing the transcript for jury selection, in my opinion.
Mm. That's really interesting. It would be really interesting to do like a deep dive on the jury selection process
Mm, mm,
in the Markel case. I haven't really looked into it that much, but it is such an interesting thing. And I may have mentioned this to you before, maybe in the first stream, but I always, when we talk about jury selection, I always like to mention the documentary series The Staircase, which
mm,
is about another Peterson. His name is Michael Peterson, who was convicted and then I think later got out on an Alford plea or like a complicated sort of semi acquittal. Too dense to get into here. I'm sure a lot of people know what I'm talking about, but he had a documentary series in 2004 that was like 13 1-hour long episodes from the perspective of his defense attorneys. And there were
mm.
like really high priced defense attorneys. The main guy was named David Rudolph, who went to college with like Obama or something. He's like real plugged in. But Rudolph had like a jury consultant. And so like a couple of the episodes are devoted to like behind the scenes of like what a jury consultant does, like all the demographics and the focus testing and all that sort of stuff, the PR strategy. It's like you can't even believe what goes into this
Wow, I
kind of
would
stuff.
like to watch this. What is this?
It's called The Staircase, and it
Oh,
came
yes,
out.
you said the staircase.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
yeah,
came
yeah.
out about 20. It came out almost exactly 20 years ago now in 2004. It was like one of the original like true crime series that like gripped people, and it had like a huge afterlife on like Netflix. And I don't know where it's streaming these days, but
Yeah,
it's a fun series. It's a little outdated in some ways now, but it's a fascinating thing. If you love true crime, it's a good watch. Yeah.
yeah. But in my opinion, she's true crime wife is right. I think he wasn't worth the money. I also did not go deep dive into jury selection. I was hearing it from mentor lawyer during the trial. He was doing videos about it and streaming it. Um, But when I knew that Josh Dubin, the Innocence Project, is gonna take over the jury selection, I thought that it's gonna be something, explosive. He's gonna do something that no one has done before. But I don't think he's just a name. I think he's
Yeah, brand name.
just that's it. I don't think he did anything
I think they
special.
made a fundamental mistake by not. If you were going to get a jury consultant, you should have got one from Tallahassee, because the local knowledge is what a jury consultant is all about. So if
Yes,
you're
true.
not from Tallahassee, you really maybe even it could have been somebody like not from Tallahassee if they were like super plugged in. But the other thing about Tallahassee is it's the state capital. If I'm not, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like it's like a political town. So you kind of have to be plugged in.
Wow, I didn't think about this point. That's a very good point to think about. They should have gotten someone from Tallahassee. How stupid is this? Is this? Of course, they should have gotten someone from Tallahassee.
Yep, there's plenty of good options. I don't know why they didn't. I guess because they wanted to try to impress people or something, but that I
Yeah.
think it had the opposite effect.
The Adelsons always like to choose the fanciest option, I think. The
Yep.
show off option, not the real thing. Yeah.
That is, that's such a great point. And I'm just trying to catch up with the comments here,
Yeah, me
guys. So
too.
many
Let's
great
let's
comments.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, someone's telling you wanna read it?
Oh yeah, Matthew, thank you for mentioning that. There was actually a couple of reports by the Office of the Inspector General. He's referencing the original 2009 report, which went into more of like the general outlay of like the whole scheme of the faulty forensics in the FBI lab. There was a follow-up report in 2014, which went basically concentrated on one special agent named Special Agent Michael Malone, who was the hair and fiber guy in the case that I've been researching, a cold case here in Alaska since 2008 called the Benolkin murders, and he was heavily featured in that case. So I know very well about those. And I think that's the same thing you're talking about, Matthew Newton, excuse me, Matthew Newton. Actually, I think you're maybe talking about something else, because I think it may have spurred on. Okay, yeah, you know what? I will check that out. I'm going to take a note for that, Matthew. I will make sure that I've read that. It's been a while since I've reviewed some of this stuff because yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. Let's see some other comments because there's so much. Let's go over them a little bit. Katrina, Charlie had everything, but he never had a healthy sense of self. That's very correct.
yeah,
The Innocence Project seems to be more about retroactively beating cases on technicalities rather than proving someone is innocent. Example, Peterson. Oh, that's a good point. That's very correct.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, that is yeah. They do sort of. And the thing about like when you're in it with criminal law, you kind of think about things in different terms. It's hard to explain, but one of the main questions I get asked is like, how do you feel, like, especially when I worked at the Public Defender Agency, which is the first place I worked back in 2008 to around 2013. People would always ask me, like, do you have a problem like defending people that are guilty? And it's like, you just don't think in those terms. You think more about like whether or not everything is, by the book, if it's legal or not. And so
Yeah.
it's just a sort of different frame of reference, but like that is like sort of what the Innocence Project specializes in, a sense, is the technicalities. It's not really like
It's not really
necessarily.
for innocent, like for innocent people. It's
Yep,
just, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. It's a project to prove someone is innocent, not necessarily they are innocent.
Hmm.
It's like criminal defense lawyers, the top of the top, going together to find small things to technicalities. Yes. Um, let's see.
Yeah, good
Actually,
point.
that LA Innocence Project is not part of the original Innocence Project organization. They aren't related. At least that's what I understand from the reporting when the news came out.
I think that may be actually correct, but it's like it almost is like a distinction without a difference, because in the public's imagination, it's the same thing, the Innocence Project. So I mean, I get what you're saying. I think that he's
Yeah.
correct again on sort of like a technical level, but it's a very valid point to make, that they're not like there is some sort of organizational firewall there. But anyway, yeah, that is an interesting. That's a good counter note, Matthew. I appreciate that. You're a lot of good points tonight, Matthew.
Yeah, Barb, I think is saying the same thing than the
Yeah,
that's doing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Um, Freud Joy. Okay. It was here. Yeah, right. Mentor lawyer had it, and Patty's Playhouse has read the transcripts on jury selection. Okay.
Yeah, I just recently discovered Patty's Playhouse. Yeah, okay. That's really cool, Matthew. I that might be a good subject for a video because it's such a it's so confused in the public's mind and even in my mind. But I haven't really read that much about it. But that might be something to do like a deeper dive on. Yeah, that might be a good subject for a video.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Patty's Playhouse recently read almost 1,000 pages in 8 parts. Wow, Patty attended trial. Nice. We should look her up.
Yeah, yeah. I just recently started watching that channel and it's very quality. Yeah.
Okay. Donna will use Alex Morris, the Tallahassee attorney for jury selection. Alex, I heard about Alex. Is he the one that's taking the what is the appeal for Charlie or not?
Mm. I'm not sure on that. But that is something I want to be very plugged into because I do think that there's like a sort of an aphorism or a saying in criminal law that like you win or lose a trial in jury selection. I think it's pretty true. Like it's so the importance of jury selection really can't be understated. So it would be
Well,
something
at
I want
least
to read
they
more about.
learned something, right?
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, I was trying to see who's Alex Morris, but I think the most important part that we should know is that he is a Tallahassee attorney, right?
Yeah, and I think that they would just if they doubled down on that, I mean, yeah, that would be wild.
If Charlie paid Dublin $1 million for jury consulting, that's probably a means to tuck away money for Charlie in his incarceration. Jury consultants are usually 20 to 30,000. Yes, but we're
But
talking
dude,
about.
yeah, I think that you're probably right. He like should have cost 20 or 30 grand, but the extra 970K was for the Joe Rogan plug. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think he even mentioned it, but just the fact that he was on Rogan. I mean, that's the sort of thing about those podcasts is like once you get on that circuit, you're sort of made.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. 20, 30 maximum. 1 million is I heard this before that he paid $1 million for him. I think it's true, right? Since we heard it from
I've
many.
heard it a few times, but I haven't
Yeah.
like actually confirmed it. And I don't know that like those sort of well, it might have been in the file because sometimes that stuff is, but it's usually like in the file more for like indigent defendants or people that can't afford an attorney, like when you get into
Oh,
finances. So I'm not sure on that. But maybe I'll try to Google it.
Alex
That is
Morris.
a
Sorry, continue. I'm
no,
sorry.
yeah, sorry. You're good.
Um, Alex Morris is co-counsel with Rashi for Donna. I like this nickname for Rashbomb. Rashi. I love it. Thank you.
That's
True crime
perfect.
wifey. Uh, yeah, I
Yeah.
have a lot to say about Rashbomb being Donna's lawyer attorney. That's like, oh my God.
Yeah. What is that about?
Second-hand embarrassment. Is he gonna say the same opening statement that he said in Charlie's trial? Is he gonna go with the puzzle pieces theory also? Like,
It'd be so I would die if he's like, all right, I like jigsaw puzzles. That's how he starts.
I told you last year, and I'm telling you now. Why?
Oh
That's
gosh.
man, it's really embarrassing.
The suspense is like killing me. Can we just do Donna's trial like tomorrow? Like
Yeah.
I'm so ready.
Oh my God. Yeah, I really want to see her in trial. I want to see her demeanor and everything. Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
going to be even more interesting than Charlie because she
Oh yeah.
cannot hold herself.
No,
She
there's
cannot
gonna
shut up.
be outbursts. I mean, it's like inevitable.
Yeah. Okay. The next one we have is Charlie Edelson has been moved to administrative confinement and is no longer allowed to have visitors.
Hmm. Yeah, I saw some of Fancy Fiction's reporting on this, and it seems like uh, the the information that we do have indicates that he's being extorted by like at least a couple of different people, or at
Mm.
least there's been attempts made, and there's also apparently like a hit out on his life, which is I think what this first comment is getting into. And it's yeah, I mean, yeah, it could not be worse to be Charlie right now. I mean, he's in the in the hole, and
Oh my
if he's
gosh.
in general pop, he's probably gonna have real problems.
Yeah. I mean, even in prison, he cannot be free. He's in a prison in a prison. Man, oh my gosh, what is this? He was saying to his mom on the jail calls that even cancer, terminal cancer, is better than this. He wasn't even in the hole for this long when he said that. So imagine what he's thinking now, what his thoughts are now, especially with someone like Charlie who cannot stop talking, cannot
Oh,
stop chatting. Even Rashbaum said that about him, that he likes to talk. Yeah, he likes to talk so much. He admitted that he likes to talk so much.
mhm.
Imagine being in the whole this whole time. Um,
Yeah.
Too much, man.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't, it'd be hard to think of like a worse personality type for being in an administrative confinement. I mean, and it was to the point where it seems like Rashbaum's like a pretty controlled guy, but I think there was like a certain point where like Rashbaum like yelled something like enough to Charlie, which is like, to me, it just told me everything about that dynamic. Like Charlie has to be incredibly grating. I mean, oof.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw Rashbaum. I think it was at the verdict or something. He was laughing. Charlie was laughing, and Rashbaum looked at him and just like scolded him like a child. And Charlie was. Is this the incident you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and Charlie was all like put together after he heard what he said. Man, it's. But saying this now, I think this is the only way I can think of Charlie turning on Donna, Wendy, and others. Honestly, this is the
Yeah.
when you're at this point, it's about survival. You don't think about sister and brother and whatever.
Yeah, that nice emotional fulfillment of mom's approval doesn't really help so much right now, you know?
Oh yeah, that's another layer of it that he cannot talk to Donna. Donna is in prison now, and it's illegal to talk to each other even.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's I hate the carceral state so much, and I hate it even more that it makes me feel sorry for people like Charlie.
Mm.
Like nobody should be locked alone in a room for like the rest of their life for like the next 30 years, but it's like I don't know. I mean, at the same time, I can't really, I don't really pity him that much. So
I don't feel so bad. I don't feel bad for him, but I agree with you. And I don't think this is the correct way of handling things.
yeah,
Put people in a hole. Like, even animals, you don't treat them like that. Eh, I don't know what to say about this. Like, the prison system and everything involved in it is very um like, I think of it as a parent. I think of it, for example, the way that we were raised. The older generation was much stricter, and they had different ideologies than us. And then we came, this generation, and at least for me, for example, I said, stop, I'm not gonna continue with this cycle. I'm going to break the cycle. I'm going to do another way of, not discipline, even another way of parenting. So this is how I feel towards the prison, that they are still these very harsh parenting that doesn't really, like, it makes it worse on
yeah,
people. Doesn't help anything. Yeah, I don't agree with the putting someone in a hole for that time, even yeah, with everything.
yeah. I think it just makes everything work. It's not pragmatic. It's not like on any level, and it's also it just makes I think if you just kind of look at like the rates of incarceration and stuff like that, it's pretty hard to argue against the numbers. So
Yeah. Matthew's saying, here is my prediction. If Donna loses at trial, she will give one of those fake outrage smiles and shake her head in disbelief.
Hmm. Yeah, like the footage of Donna in the cop car after she got arrested is like some of the most eerie stuff, because at a certain point she's like staring at the camera, but she does have, I know it, Matthew's talking about there's several points like in court where she kind of just had like this smirk, like, can you believe this? Like as if she was saying, and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, I can, Donna, I can believe it.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm like elated, but at the same time, like again, like I don't like want to like wish anybody ill, but it's just so hard to have anything but disdain for the Adelsons. So
yeah.
mm,
That's very, actually, you said it very nicely. The comment that you said about Donna saying like, "Are you serious?" That's how it felt. That's what her face was saying. That's right.
mm,
Helen is saying better than being dead, I guess.
mm,
I agree with you, Helen, but I also don't agree with you, and at the
mhm,
same time,
mm,
just because I think sometimes death is I mean, we think of death as a bad thing. It's I don't think it's a bad thing overall. Of course, we're not talking about the horrific way that Dan Markel passed in. I'm just saying the phenomenon of death and just moving from this life to another life or whatever you believe in. I don't think it's as bad as prison.
yeah, I mean yeah, it's one of those things where it's like a rock and a hard place. But it's just kind of like scanning through these couple comments here, and there's some really
Yeah.
interesting stuff. Heavy boysenberry talking about Luis Rivera, and then down here this really funny comment from Safe Pop 2077 where he says, "Oh, now Charlie will have like a real extortion story to tell," which is so funny because it's like Charlie's whole alibi, his whole defense at trial was like, I'm being double extorted, and now he's actually being double extorted. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, it's like almost like he wished it into existence or something. It's like the monkey's paw.
Yeah, that's very correct. Yes, it's like he wished it on himself. Yes.
Yeah. It
Um,
reminds me of like I'm part Greek, and so it reminds me of like Greek myths, like the thread of fate, where it's like you can't escape your fate on some level.
yeah, that's true too.
Hmm.
Okay, should we go to the next one?
Yeah, no, I think that we covered that one
Okay.
pretty well, and I'm having
Anytime you want to add something, you can stop me and tell me.
no,
Let
I
me.
think I think we're at a pretty good balance. So yeah.
Okay, the next one says, to anyone who thinks that Danny Markel's murder was committed without Wendy's knowledge, think about the 1 dozen harebrained ideas her mother came up with. Wendy vetoed all of them.
Hmm.
Mark my words, this will be used in the trial against Wendy. Georgia asked her on the stand under oath if Wendy offered the $1 million to Danny to allow her to relocate to Miami. And Wendy said no, she didn't offer that to him because she didn't want to, or something to that effect. Donna wouldn't dare take moves on Wendy's life without Wendy's permission. This is Wendy's world, and the rest of the Adelsons are just living in it. Edit. Oh, Wendy is downvoting from her 25 different accounts.
I have noticed that like on some stuff on the Dan Markel thread or subreddit, like in general, the people there are like so positive. So it sticks out like a sore thumb. Sometimes like when you post something, it'll get like a few downvotes really quickly, and you're like, oh, like the Adelson PR flacks are in the building. But yeah, this is a really good point, and I think it reminds me of a point that like Carl Steinbeck would make. And one of the things that I really love about the way he frames things is like the whole sort of idea of indicators. And there's just like a number of indicators that tell us whether or not a story rings true, or whether or not it's sort of more presupposed, if it seems more synthetic, more fake. And this is just like a great example, because like Wendy traps herself here by you know in that line of questioning, saying that, yeah, like I said, no, I don't want to offer them the $1 million. We didn't do it because I didn't want to, is essentially what she said on the stand. So it's like, Well, do you think that they were just going to plan the murder without her? I mean, she sort of boxes herself in unintentionally every time she opens her mouth because
Mm,
she's not. Her story just doesn't have the ring of truth, and there's just a number of really interesting little logical connections like this that I love. That just hang Wendy out to dry.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so do we really know that she really vetoed it?
Hmm.
The $1 million?
Well, yeah, I think so because as they're referring to here, it came up like when Georgia was when Georgia was examining. I don't remember if it was on exam or if it was on the redirect or whatever, but Georgia was um, asking Wendy on the stand about the $1 million bribe or offer to allow Wendy to relocate, and Wendy acknowledged in her testimony that she said no on it. She put the veto on it. Essentially, I mean, I don't know if she said it in those exact words, but she essentially agreed with Georgia's premise that she vetoed it. Essentially, it would be
Mm,
interesting to pull it up. I don't know that we could find a time code or something like that, but yeah, that's essentially my recollection of it because I have
mm,
watched it a couple times. Yeah.
mm. Okay.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Someone's saying this is such an excellent and insightful
Oh,
quote.
yeah. This is
And
such a good comment. They're talking about Amy Adler.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, sure. From Defiant Ad 88 or 86, my vision's a little
86.
squinty. This is such an excellent and insightful post. In the greater narrative, Amy Adler has been a somewhat forgotten victim in this case. I hope her evidence comes out in trial, at Donna's trial. Yeah, me too. And I genuinely hope she has been able to heal. This whole case is horrible in so many ways, but I cannot imagine what things have been like from her, Amy Adler's perspective. Edit to add, I see you weird ass downvoters. So another person that noticed the downvotes as soon as their thing got posted. And it's funny because you can see that this comment is highly upvoted. It has 81 upvotes. So it should have even more because there's Adelson bots that are downvoting it. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I didn't really think of until I think I read this comment. Because Amy Adler really hasn't talked at all. She hasn't been public, and just such a sharp relief with the way that the Adelsons have acted going on podcasts and yeah,
Yeah.
just
I mean, I'm curious also to hear from her, hear from Amy. I'm sure that she has so many things to say about the case, but she chose to be private.
the one window I just thought of too is when I was doing the Tamara Demko video.
Mm,
Tamara talks about how like the day after Dan was murdered, she talked to Amy Adler on the phone for like
mm,
a long time, and it sounds like they were probably talking about their suspicions that the Adelsons were involved, because that's like right before Tamara drove unannounced to the Adelsons' house, because that was like all sort of in the same sequence. Yeah, I think that's exactly how it went down. Is she talked to Amy Adler when she got off the phone with Amy Adler? She then drives to the Adelsons' house,
mm,
um, you know, like she didn't call for, remember that part of her testimony where Tamara said she showed up at the Adelson's house and like Harvey looked guilty to her and all that sort of stuff. It's really fascinating chunk of the interview with Demko.
Is there a problem with the sharing of the screen or can you see it, Leo?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Good. Okay. I'm just checking.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's
Let's
try to
see.
see if there's any other. There's actually been a ton of comments too. It looks like.
Do you want to read some of the comments?
Yeah, sure. I'm just sort of paging through here.
Yeah.
True Crime Wifey says, I think Donna is zonked out on Xanax at the airport. Yeah, that's something that came up a couple times, like on the wires. Like Charlie would tell Donna to like take a chill pill, take a Xanax. Did you get that impression as well, Noah? That Donna was
Yes.
zonked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got it exactly from the mugshot. Her mugshot told me that her face was numb.
Mm,
Like, when you go to the dentist and you work or your teeth, and then you don't feel your mouth for a couple of hours. That's how it felt that she is having, but with whole face. It's like her whole face is paralyzed. That's how it felt. And no emotions, nothing.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that is so true. It now that you mention it, it kind of reminds me of like a serial killer mugshot because she does like she looks like gaunt and sort of hollow, and yeah, it sort of reminds me of like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. If you've watched that movie,
I
like
have. Yes.
that's one of
Yeah,
my
I
favorite
have.
films. I've watched it like a million times.
Yeah.
True crime wifey again. Wendy has use and derivative use immunity. They can't derive anything from her testimony to use against her. However, state already has evidence on things they are asking.
Yeah. I don't think, honestly, I don't think this immunity is gonna stop the prosecution from prosecuting her if they chose to do that. Yeah, that's how I think. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think uh, true crime wifey is making like an interesting point here that I sort of touched on some of my videos where I talked about Wendy's testimony because there's just a number of again indicators, as Carl Steinbeck would say, like when especially like when George is examining Wendy. You know, I especially noticed it after reviewing it a few times. There's like a little bit of a pattern that I sensed when Georgia would get into an area where she felt like she could like really go for the kill with Wendy. She would sort of back off at times and then just sort of pause for a bit to like let Wendy's like super big lie just sort of sit there
Yeah,
rather than like trying to follow up. And so I thought that was very effective, and it's such a delicate dance because yeah, because of the derivative use immunity issue. And so there's little interesting things like that that are interesting to pick up on. But I didn't really pick up on it until I sort of rewatched stuff a few times. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah. There's so much things that go into it that you need to watch it a few times to make up your mind about it. But I love Georgia Kaplan. I love her. I love this woman. Oh my God. She,
yes,
I look up for her as a woman. She's amazing. You know, when she cross-examined Charlie, the internet went wild. Like, oh, she did not do a good job. Why did she do that? Da, 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 da. And the thing is that most people think, or some people think that a prosecution should be, aggressive, or maybe not aggressive, but like stop at each point and just nitpick on it and be, you know, she wasn't like that, but she knew what she was doing. She's way smarter than that.
yep,
Remember Jodi Arias' trial?
yep,
Remember the prosecution, how he was conducting the trial? He was very aggressive. He was shouting. He was something to say is when I was watching it, I loved the prosecutor. And I even love him till today. I love his energy
yep.
as Noah the watcher. Legally, you cannot do this. That's
Yeah.
unprofessional.
Yeah, you have to be very careful as a prosecutor, and that's when after I worked at the public defender agency, I worked at a city prosecutor's office here in Juneau, and it was so interesting to see it from the other side. But one of the things that I really internalized from working there for a few years is that the prosecutor has like the bully pulpit. They have so much power, and you have to be like very community minded as a prosecutor. You have to not prosecute cases just because you think you can win them, but prosecute cases because you think it's like the right thing to do and it serves the best interests of justice. So if you're not thinking in those sort of terms, if you're trying to be like a bull in a china shop, like and I think that the contrast between Rashi, our great new nickname for Rash Bomb,
Yeah, let's
and
call him Rashi from
yeah, let's
now
call him
on.
Rashi. The contrast between Rashi and Georgia, I think maybe sort of threw people off or something because Rashi's like so flashy, flashy, and
Yeah.
Georgia is so understated, but also like super efficient, and that's another thing that I think people might not pick up on if they haven't worked in that world for a while is like Georgia's got other cases that she's working on besides this one. Like, so she's in and out. Like, she's
Yeah.
not one of the things that like juries really pick up on, appreciate is efficiency.
Mm,
So if you're dragging it out, they can tell immediately. And so
yeah.
that was a way that Georgia bought a ton of credibility with the jury is just by like, boom, we're not going to mess around. We're just going to do business in and out. And
Right.
I think people got caught up in the hype of the thing a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's part of it. That's part that her attitude is part of her prosecute, like part of her, cause or whatever that she's doing. Yeah. Um, what else?
I'm on an island. I guess we'll read some comments to see. Oh, let's see.
I'm so sorry. I
Oh, you're good. You're
keep
good.
on pressing the wrong thing. I'm so
You're all good. I'm just kind of checking out
I
the
move my
comments.
fingers on the pad so it goes back, and that's what happens.
Yeah. I was reading Matthew Newton replying to True Crime Wifey. Yes, that part you have right. Um, the state does need to be able to prove it, though. So he's talking about the qualified immunity again. Yeah, Juan Martinez, True Crime Wifey, was Jody's prosecutor. Yeah, I was trying to search for the name, but I couldn't remember it. Katrina also loves Carl Steinbeck. I whenever I can, I try to catch his lives. They're like I said the other day, when I caught one last weekend, it was like church. It was like seriously like a spiritually fulfilling experience because Phil Markel was in the chat that day. That was a special treat for me. So
Yeah. I'm trying to read some of the comments.
yeah,
They just got here. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome. You're not late. It's okay.
right
Georgia
on
is,
time.
yeah, Georgia is cool, calm, collected. She's playing the long game. After Charlie's testimony, she wasn't going to put the jury through too much more. Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's very correct. Rashi, I mean, is very theatrical. His whole like I even when he was cross-examining Jeffrey Lacasse,
Mm.
he was saying something to him, and like he's very theatrical. That's how I felt. He was smiling and laughing, making jokes.
I think that might work in like New York City, maybe or something. I mean,
Mm,
it had the vibe has to be right, but Tallahassee, it's a non-starter. I mean, for me anyway. It just doesn't work. Doesn't line
yeah.
up.
Okay. Do you want to go to the next thread?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah, this is a real good one.
Yeah, you like this one so much. I
Yeah, do you
know.
want me to read this one, or are
Right.
you good?
Please read it.
Okay.
Yes.
Wendy wanted to find Dan in the garage. Apologize if it's already been discussed here, and I'm sure it had a little bit, but not to this degree. This is a great thread. I believe the plan on the 18th was for Wendy to find Dan deceased that morning. And if it wasn't for that pesky neighbor, she most likely would have. Dan wanted to talk in person about the boys' school. Wendy had been faking laryngitis all week and pushing the conversation to Friday, the 18th, um, thus giving her the reason to drive to Dan's house. And how perfect for her to be the one to pull up. No gun on her, no gun residue on her body, making her look extremely innocent. Because if it was a hit, surely she wouldn't go find Dan after it, right?
Right.
Did you want to read the next one, or you want me to keep going?
Keep
Okay.
going.
That is the reason for the constant phone calls that morning between Wendy, Charlie, and Katie. Being precise, minute to minute, mattered so much because she wanted to find Dan herself in the garage. Otherwise, the plan should have been to just stay away from Dan and his calls because the shooters are heading in there in the morning. She didn't need to know the specific time. This to me is like, it's such a great point, and there's more too, which is why this is such a fun thread. When she saw the police tape, she was forced to make the bourbon purchase quickly and to even stop for gas, which is so odd because she was running out of time to get to the lunch date when she stopped to gas up. Those two purchases were so far from her house and restaurant and made her 25 minutes for that lunch date. Isam mentioned that the lunch date with friends was last minute. How last minute? Whose idea was the lunch? I'm betting that it was Wendy's idea, but she never intended on actually going to that lunch with her friends. But the fact that she had those plans so soon after Dan was shot would help her look innocent. Maybe we should pause here because there's like already so much to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that so far? I mean, there's like that's sort of I think maybe next time if we do a thread like this, maybe it would be good to pause like after every couple of paragraphs because it's just so loaded with interesting points.
You're right. Yes. Yeah. You want to start? I know that you like this thread, so please.
Yeah, I was just gonna the thing about the phone call traffic is such a good point because like if let's say there's reality A and reality B, right?
Mm,
And reality A is the plan is to just like stay, to not be near the scene, like as your instinct would probably be. You don't want to be near the scene of the crime. That's like one of the basics of getting away with stuff, I guess. Scenario B is like Wendy wants to find Dan in the garage. So like in which scenario does all the phone traffic make more sense? In which scenario does the weird like minute to minute uh, one of the things that I thought was really interesting that you picked up on was like the layers of her alibis. Like which
mm.
scenario does that make more sense? I don't know if you wanted to pick up on that, but just like how she had like alibis on alibis.
Yeah, this made me think. This thread made me think like she had so many alibis that day that it's very hard to be convinced that they were natural or that they were true. The amount of purchases that she had, of people that she talked to, of the man that came to her house, the repairman, the timing and everything. It's weird.
Yeah, and the other, I think that all came up for me fairly recently because in the Demco video I did again, I did a sort of sideline on Wendy posted something on her human law trafficking blog that morning as well. So that was the other item in there. I mean, there's like at least like 4 or 5 fallback alibis, which is like
Right.
again so typical of an over preparer like Wendy. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I remember when you said that, I also thought about it like this is another alibi. I mean, she's either so lucky or it's prepared
Hmm.
to be like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Either it's like the strangest set of coincidences ever in history, but the other thing that am so interested in seeing with Donna's trial is like whether or not, for example, Robert Swartz, the guy that was the TV repairman, will testify, or whether or not the guy from the liquor store, who Wendy in her interview with ISOM describes how the guy told her that she had nice eyes and stuff like that. So of
Mhm.
course she was, like you only do stuff like that, or try to stand out as like memorable to somebody in a liquor store if you're trying to like make them, if it makes a ton more sense if it's part of an alibi, right?
Right. Yeah. If you're
Otherwise,
trying to make a point to the other person that I was for sure there, even like the guy commented on my ass, because think about who says that. I mean, your husband just shot just now, and you tell the detective that someone flirted with your eyes. Isn't that weird?
so weird.
Very
Yeah,
weird.
it's
I don't know. Very weird. That's not something to mention. That's not something to bring up in a. But yeah, I agree with you that probably she said it because, like, yes, even I had a conversation with this guy. Yeah, it would be very interesting if they had him and the repairman.
yeah, and yeah, the repairman is like something that I really would love to do a video on, and I think I will at some point. But the problem that I ran into in trying to do a draft of it is there's really not that much material out there, so I have to
Yeah.
kind of really dig.
Mm-hmm. That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
Oh, and so just another bullet point here I wanted to pick up on is Wendy's odd claim that she didn't have the time to shower and get ready in the morning. Again, thinking about scenario A, scenario B, like it makes so much more sense for the alibi because that is something that we were planning on possibly touching on in our first live. But there's a section of the ISOM interview where they do the gunshot residue test. It comes at about an hour into the interview, and like that test only really works if you haven't showered recently. Like, or at least it's more dispositive. It would, like, if you had showered in between when you shot a gun and got tested, the test wouldn't be nearly as accurate, as I guess my point.
So that's why she said it out loud that I didn't shower that day. So
I
she
think
can
so.
prove to them that for real she didn't have gun residue.
I'm good for GSR. I think that's what and there's just so many little indicators again like that. That's just like, how can you, it's just when you line it all up, it's so. Yeah, it's like you're putting Wendy in a pretzel, like logically, because it's just impossible to explain otherwise.
That yeah, it's very hard, right, to explain it otherwise.
Oh,
Um,
and then the part of this is one more thing that if you, I apologize, I'm so excited about this thread, but the finding Dan herself is like so typically Wendy, like she would have can you imagine how much mileage she would have gotten out of like just draping herself in that victimhood? Ugh,
Yeah,
it's just disgusting to think about.
typical Wendy.
And oh, and the point here, Wendy could have made herself look like a hero if she had attempted CPR. I mean, yeah, gosh, and yeah, and driven in the ambulance and the whole bit. Yeah, she would have just really. I'm sure that's the performance she was like planning for. So she was all hyped up for that, and then when things went like kind of left, I think that's why her affect was so off. Yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer is saying Wendy isn't smart. She's calculating, extremely calculated and manipulative. She is the mastermind. Donna and Charlie were just her flying monkeys.
It's an interesting take. I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting discussion. My instinct is that I think it was more Donna, but I don't know. What do you think of that triangle?
I think there's some truth to this statement that Jennifer just said.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Could
Uh,
be both.
yes, it could be both. And I think Wendy is yes, she is obviously she's very manipulative and calculating. She's and I said it before and said again, she's like Donna but 10 times
Mm.
updated than
Yeah.
Donna as to manipulation and
Yep.
all these things. And I, I agree with her because I said it also before that indirectly she was planting the seeds for the hit to happen. So yeah, you're right. In a
Mm.
way, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I'm always so interested in points like this that go against the grain of my instinct, and so that's a very thoughtful comment, Jennifer. Yeah. Thank you.
Matthew says, I don't know about this theory. In their jailhouse phone calls, Charlie is telling Donna how annoying it is that Wendy showed up at Dan's house.
It's another good example of like a countervailing point, but I would say that it's totally possible that Wendy was freelancing, because the other thing that to note in that direction is that within like half an hour she told Isom the whole like Charlie hitman joke story. So there are some breadcrumbs leading one to the possible conclusion that Wendy actually wanted to implicate her family as an insurance policy. So, but that is, I mean, it is one of those kind of things where it's sometimes kind of hard to know where to pivot on these sort of things, but it's just sort of interesting to sort of walk down the road with an idea and see where it leads.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting to talk about this possibility that this may have been the case. Okay, did you read the final one? Wendy could have been.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think, yeah, we touched on it just briefly. Yeah, she could have attempted CPR. I mean, that whole scene this is such a great, the writer of this thread. Do you mind scrolling up so we can see who
sure.
wrote it again? I mean,
Yeah.
they spell it out so well here. A stunning impact, 6593. They spell it out so well here. That's my birthday, January 29th.
Really?
That's when they registered their account. But it's almost like cinematic at the end, where I can just picture in my mind Wendy like beating on Dan's chest as like the ambulance guys show up and
Yeah.
crying uncontrollably and the whole bit.
Yeah, she likes to put on a show. Yeah.
She can be a very good actor when she wants to.
I've seen you in action. My God, we memorized the emails
Yeah,
and
yeah.
scenarios, right?
It is burned into my brain at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to read some of the comments or do you want to move to another thread?
Well,
What
let's
would
read
you?
this one, if you don't mind, by No
Sure.
Violinist. I'm more inclined to think that she was jumping out of her skin, needing to know what had happened, and too impulsive to not drive past his house. Charlie Adelson is a pathological liar, so you can't believe a word of what he says. But when he was ridiculing Wendy Adelson on the phone to Don Adelson for driving past Dan Markel's house, that sounded genuine. And that is almost exactly the point that was just made by Matthew, I believe. And yeah, I mean, this is why it's such a good thread, is because there's arguments to be made both ways. But I think that my comment that I made earlier sort of still stands.
Yeah.
Just about how like it's possible that Wendy was freelancing, or that she went off script or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Um, okay.
Oh, I just see this username here, Iranian lawyer, a very good poster. It always has great points. And so he has a point about the police tape causing her. Why would that cause her to drive away? Why not get out of the car and start crying and playing the victim right then and there? Couldn't she have still used the same excuse that they were planning to meet and talk? I mean, that's a great point. And that sort of gets into like the fog of war or the vagaries of these sort of things where I think it just seems like something went off script to me, and that's sort of the impression that I get.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible.
Mm.
I can understand, yeah, of course. Why would she turn around and drive away if this was the case? Yeah, I can understand this point.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
she could have just gone for it. I mean, it was sort of really, but I think it was maybe like an impulsive decision because the cops saw her, right? And
mm,
like she couldn't have known that the cops would like know the make of her car and all that sort of stuff. Like the cops seem to have like a lot of info on her pretty quickly. So I'm
yeah,
not exactly sure how they lined that up, but like yeah, it's an interesting question to puzzle out, and it indicates to me that this would be a great subject for a video because that's when you can really get into the nuts and bolts of this sort of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think like what the next Markel video I'm making is. So everything seems like a video to me now.
Yeah. Okay. Next thread: logic versus emotional persuasion to convict Wendy Adelson. The Adelson family, as per the probable cause affidavit, has lost the relocation motion in the courts and therefore chose the hitman option to enable Wendy and the boys to relocate to Miami. However, I would argue that it was solely down to Wendy and Donna not wanting the boys growing up under any Jewish religious influence whatsoever from Dan and the Markels as the main motive for the murder. This I feel is more impactful to a jury. What are your thoughts on how the prosecution are going to approach convicting Wendy?
Mm.
I I um I have to disagree with this.
Hmm.
I don't think that the Jewish or religious influence was the motive at all. I don't think it was even in their heads, like in Wendy or Donna's head. Just because they don't give a shit about their their kids. It's not that. I mean, if someone does that because they don't want them to grow up that religious,
Mm.
then you would think it's out of love. And I don't know what is it out of, but like they don't care about them, so they
Mm.
wouldn't care if they grow Christians, Jewish, whatever. They don't care. They
Mm.
just have a goal to Donna has a goal to obtain, and that's why she did it. That's my opinion. What do you think, Leo?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say, Noah, I think that's the first time I've heard you swear, and it was like it caught me off guard. It was really funny. It was
I,
awesome.
I was thinking about a better word, but I couldn't
No, that was
get it.
perfect.
I was like, okay.
Sometimes like I try to use it sparingly in my own videos, but like I think like when you just drop one, like it has, it's that had some great punch. So I thought that was perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that this is interesting because it touches on something we were talking about earlier. It's almost like the two halves of your brain, like the logical and an emotional side. And so trying to find like the correlations here. Yeah, I am always interested in motive because I think the story of a case is so important, and especially like in a trial, like whoever has the best story wins usually. So
Yeah,
um,
that's
just
right.
trying to find a good way to interpret this sort of thing is always really illuminating, I think.
Yeah. Wendy reminds me of the old black and white film, The Bad Seed. I can
Mm,
totally picture Wendy as Rhoda.
Rhoda, what a great name. I don't know that I have seen that, or at least not in recent memory, Jennifer, but I'll have to check that out. I do love old, like classic Hollywood. I've been watching a lot of stuff from like the 30s when I have a chance because
Uh-huh.
I love the interwar period for some weird reason. Anyway, between World War One and World War Two, there's a lot of interesting stuff popping off. So,
Yeah.
and I just want to mention my stomach's growling a little bit right now. So sorry if you can hear it. Sometimes I
You're
like
hungry?
Yeah, I just didn't really eat that much earlier.
You
I
want to
guess
get a
getting
snack?
no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just excusing. Hopefully nobody hears it.
No,
But
it's
I'm
okay.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Should we go to the next one? Okay.
yeah,
Wendy
sure. Or
Adelson. Okay. Do you want to read it, Leo?
okay, sure. It's a
If you don't want, I
when.
can.
No,
What?
I'm good. Wendy Adelson will look to make a deal. Oh, and this was a fairly recent thread too. Wendy Adelson is an arrogant, narcissistic sociopath who thinks she's smarter than everyone else except Dan Markel. You could see that with her demeanor and attitude on the stand. They'll never arrest me. And that was a great quote that was highlighted in Grish's series, Wendy's Television.
Mm,
But I think she wasn't expecting her brother to be convicted. That would have been a huge shock to her. Her mom getting arrested would have had the same effect, an unexpected shock, and the totality of those two outcomes would have really knocked her confidence. I think that's a good point, and it's something I've remarked on a little bit in just like questioning why her testimony seems to be getting worse and worse. You know,
mm.
she seems to be, at least that's my just general impression, is like from Katie 1 to Katie 2 to Charlie, she just seemed like she was just more, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I've watched more
No, you're
Wendy, but
right. I see it too. Continue. Yeah.
yeah, even for somebody as conceited and supercilious as Wendy Adelson, it would be hard not to be concerned.
Hello. Is, can you hear me, Leo?
It's kind of we're cooperating with the state. Question
I cannot.
for them.
It's. Why is it doing this? Wait. Are you still here? Am I still here? شو هيدا؟ Oh, I think Leo. What happened? Going in and out. Okay, so you guys can see me still and hear me, right? So it's okay. Okay. So okay, let's see. I'm gonna send him the link one more time. Okay, you gotta watch The Bad Seed. It's a classic. Sure, yeah, I can look it up. I think Charlie may have realized it after conviction. The repetitive ranting and raving on the jail calls makes me think thinks he's been had. Let's see, where's okay, let's go. Yeah, Wendy Adelson will look to make a deal. I don't know. Okay, first of all, um, I think that she expected her brother to be convicted. I don't think that she didn't expect that. First, because she knows at her heart that he did that. And she was the one that told on him about the joke, meaning that she was the first one that thought of him as a suspect. It wasn't us, it was her that she thought of him as the first suspect that came to her mind was Charlie. Um, so with everything else and the evidence, I'm sure she knows it, but of course wouldn't say it out loud that it was a true conviction. And second point is that the lack of communication with her brother and parents that we discovered in the jail calls. Um, so Donna is always complaining about Wendy not communicating with her and not even not communicating, not asking about Charlie, not Yeah, what else? Not asking about Charlie, or not before the conviction and after the conviction and in the trial. So it's like indirectly she's saying, I don't want to deal with you guys anymore. Um, and when she says that, of course, that means that she believes it. I think she has two personas. One that she deals with her parents and Charlie and like her family, and one that goes out public. And I think the public one is the one that we see in trials, which are um, which is the persona that says that her parents and Charlie are innocent. She's always backing them in public. She wouldn't say like she would always back them up in public in trials. But um, Charlie was the first person that she thought of, and she wouldn't talk to them and she wouldn't check up on Charlie. Doesn't that tell you something? Doesn't that tell you that she's convinced that Charlie is the one that ordered the hit? Welcome back,
Bang!
Leo.
Sorry about that. I think my internet fuzzed out. I had to restart my computer.
Yeah, sure. It's okay.
Whew. How y'all
Um,
doing?
what were you saying? Which you were?
You know, I can't remember. I kind of just was going through the wormhole there trying to fight with my internet. So
It's
anyway,
okay. I was just saying about Wendy, how I think she has two personas. One that's in public in trials, that we see it in trials, and the other one is with her family. She wouldn't talk to her family. She wouldn't communicate with them. She would ignore them, and even though they are asking for her help, still ignoring them. She wouldn't ask about Charlie, and that really pissed Donna off. On the other, I mean, this tells you that she's convinced that they are involved. Then why wouldn't you talk to them? Then why wouldn't you have a relationship with them? Then why wouldn't you at least ask about Charlie if you weren't convinced that uh, that he is he should be convicted? And then
yeah.
there's the trial persona that's like always defending her parents, always having their back.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's it. She wears a lot of different masks, which is ironic because she literally has like a mask on her face.
yeah.
Yeah. I usually try not to be like critical of people's physical attributes, but there's just something that it's like such an elephant in the room that she has like this Botox going on. And so it's like it would be sort of disingenuous not to comment on it a little bit, just to say that like it affects her whole sort of vibe a lot, I think, you know.
Wendy, you mean? Wendy had Botox?
I am pretty certain. I mean, she just looks like her face is like kind of like stretched a little bit, and it just is like so lineless that I think so. And I just I've just noticed it, and I've also noticed that like there's one still that I grabbed from the most recent the Charlie trial, and it's when she's like grabbing the binder and she kind of grimaces, and it like makes her forehead crunch up in like a really odd way. So
Uh-huh.
I've noticed that, but it's interesting that I mean I could be off. I mean that's just my impression. I don't.
No, actually, now that you said it, I can see it. I noticed there's something off with her face. I just cannot pinpoint it. And I thought maybe she's just like she's getting older, because
Sure.
when we saw her in Katie's trial, it was, I don't know when was that? When was that? It was a few years back. Like,
First one was like 2017, 2018 or something
okay,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So of course that's how I thought. But now that you said that, yes, that it makes sense. It makes sense. Yes.
And especially for, women of that age in Miami, I mean, I think it's pretty epidemic, you know. I mean, that's just my impression. I haven't done any sort of like demographic studies on it, but it
Yeah.
just seems like it's a pretty popular thing, especially for like a certain class.
Right.
And anyway,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah.
But so I wanted to entertain this idea of Wendy getting arrested and flipping on and making a deal and flipping on her family.
Hmm.
And I think this is, it could happen. Yeah. I think it could happen. The reason that I'm saying that is, like I can see her flipping on mom and Charlie and everybody else, because if you see the emails, um, like, so I think she would use this. did you see the emails that Mom Donna was sending me? They were all ideas to get her way, and I wasn't even replying to her. And
Mm,
also, like Donna in one of her emails was saying to her, "Don't tell us that you want to move with this in a sense of peace." Remember?
mm,
And so she could use this um, as her defense. Like, see, I did not agree with her. I wanted to go in peace, but she was the manipulative one. She was the mastermind, and I didn't want that. Um, yeah, that's how that's the scenario I see if she flipped on them, if she was arrested and she flipped on them.
yeah, it definitely seems like a very real possibility, and especially with my recollection of reading the last email that I believe is out there, where Wendy has like this weird canned response to Donna, talking about how it's like basically not her fault that Charlie got convicted,
Yeah,
and Donna was like basically like pleading with Wendy, or at least that's my recollection of it, like to get in touch with Charlie, or just to talk to her family. But it's like, it was like a lawyerly response back from Wendy, and that to me indicates that, like, she's weighing her options, I'm sure, at this point. And also, like, just on a pragmatic level, she is the mother of those two children. So, I mean, in that sense, she's the primary, most important primary caregiver. Although it really probably was Donna,
yeah,
at least in the period after Dan's murder, that would probably actually raise those boys, which is terrifying. But
it is very terrifying. Yes.
yeah, it
Jennifer
was like,
says, yes, so
oh, I'm
continue.
sorry. I was just gonna say, I just thought of this. It was almost like Donna got to like time travel into the past by doing the Dan Markel murder. She got to go back to like when she was a young mother again, and raising those two boys. I think that like she was like I'm gonna use a curse word here. She was like a pig in shit, like after that whole murder, because she, got to like have charge of these two boys again, these two children again. And I think that's something that like Donna really appeals to her, is like molding her, little mini me's, her little her kids into her own image, so
To your point, Wendy in her podcast, remember the podcast, the writing class podcast, she said that she sees Donna praising her kids just
yes.
like she praised her. She even taught them the president's names, just like she taught me. So yeah, you're right. She's
Mm.
reliving her youth.
Something else that's really interesting I just thought of recently, is that like this is one of those things that's like so kind of in front of your nose that it seems obvious, but the boys' names are Benjamin and Lincoln, which are like typical American names, like Abraham Lincoln and Benjamin Franklin, perhaps they're named after. I'm just guessing. I mean, there may be other family stuff there, but that's what it evokes to me. And it made me also think about, like, in one of those stories, I think it was Rob Adelson told it on the Wondery podcast, Over My Dead Body. He talked to, he told that story about how his family teased him as Honest Abe,
Yeah,
a reference to Abe Lincoln. So it's so ironic that the oldest boy is named Lincoln, right?
right. Yeah,
Honest Abe. That's just kind of, when I made that connection, I was like, oh my God, that's so, like, the family, obviously you didn't really, it's so obvious. I think that came from the Markel side, the instinct to name him Lincoln. That's not something I think the Adelsons would care about or want to name.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer says, I can't wait to see Wendy testify at her own mother's trial. I'm so curious to see how cold she's going to be to her own mom.
Mm.
Yeah, it's going to be, um, I don't know, a little bit hard to watch. Not hard, but like it's a weird thing happening,
Mixed emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, on some level, it will be incredibly like secondhand embarrassing.
Absolutely.
On another level, it'll be absolutely riveting. And that comment, Jennifer, like the first thing I thought of when I read that was like, God, I need to book a flight to Tallahassee when that happens, because that would
Yeah,
be like such an amazing thing to witness in person.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Donna is a co-parent according to Wendy. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
that was
very cool.
another thing that came up in that podcast that was, yeah, very on point.
Yeah. Okay, Wendy Asen will look to make a deal. Should we? Okay, let's go to the next one. Do you think Charlie Edelson and Donna Edelson have somehow justified their actions to themselves or are living in intense denial? I'm trying to wrap my head around the mindset of the Edelsons in carrying out this crime. Is their psyche so warped that they knew what they did and somehow believe it's justifiable, or have they distorted facts and reality so much that they don't believe they are responsible and created imaginary memories of conversations and decisions? I think we can all agree that none of them have indicated any remorse, guilt, or responsibility.
Hmm.
What do you think, Leo?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
what
such an
happened?
interesting question. Oh, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can
Okay.
you?
Yep. I thought I paused for a moment. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's something I've tried to puzzle out for myself quite a bit. Like, to what extent are they conscious of how they come off, conscious of their own actions? To what extent do they accept responsibility for anything? And in my every indicator I've seen seems to trend towards like they I don't think they on some level, I don't think they kind of could be. It would almost be like ego death for them to like really internalize how terrible they've been. Or
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd be interesting to hear your perspective on it, because that's my instinct, but I feel like I could definitely be, talked out
yeah.
of that, or at least, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is like the worst part of all of this. Like, um, honestly, I choose to have belief and faith in humanity and that people change, humans change. I want to believe that. The Adelsons makes it really hard for me to do that. After the conviction of Charlie, the jail calls, they were really like eye opening for me, because I thought for a second that they're gonna at least, like, I don't know, feel some kind of remorse, sorry, or whatever, some kind of something. All they did was threw their problems on other people. That's it. The jury, Tallahassee, Georgia Kappelman, like everybody was were wrong and they were right.
Hmm.
They still cannot face the truth, I think, within themselves. Um, so the amount of delusion and deflection they live in is unbelievable. I always had this question whether they know in their heart what they did was wrong but justifiable, or are they in complete delusion? From the jail calls, I got the sense that they are in complete delusion and denial, and distortion of real facts. I truly think they lied and believed the lie and believed their made up story to with everything that's happening, because it's way easier to be the victim. It's
Hmm.
way easier to be the victim than to be the predator.
Hmm.
Um, Even to face yourself, so the Adelsons couldn't face themselves even after everything that's happening. They still are lying to themselves, because I truly think that Charlie, for example, he believes that he was extorted. I think he replayed the story in his head up to a point where he believes it now. That's how I think. So he can survive, so he can cope with it, because he cannot face himself. He
Hmm.
has to cope with it, him and Donna. So how to cope with it? Oh, we're the victims.
Hmm.
It's a wonderful way to cope with such a horrific thing that's happening, your conviction. Because when you're think about it, when you're a victim, it's like it's easier for you. No, don't you think so?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, and it's something that Jeffrey Lacasse commented on about Wendy, is that like her default role as a victim, or he made a lot of interesting comments about her relationship with wearing that sort of mask of victimhood.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched The Sopranos, Noah? And this is kind of like a random left field thing, but that's kind of how my mind works. You know that show, The Sopranos?
Let
It's
me
like
look it
a
up because I like it's very familiar.
yeah,
It
it's a show
sounds
about like a mob family in New Jersey. And it ran on HBO like in the early 2000s. It was very popular.
9.2. It sounds
Yeah,
looks
it's a great show. But the thing I was going to mention about it, the thing that one of the things that the parts of that show that I enjoyed the most was there's one of Tony Soprano, the main character of the show, is like a mob boss. And what's interesting about him is he's sort of like a postmodern version of a mob boss in that he goes to like a psychiatrist in the show. And one of the points that like got unpacked on that show that I hadn't really realized about that whole process of talk therapy is, and there were some studies that were done on this around the time, and it sort of got written into the show, the fictional show. The show borrowed a lot from like a reality, as all great fiction does. And it talked about how like real people with like real personality disorders, like sociopaths and just along those sort of lines, are so resistant to talk therapy or any sort of therapy really that like in fact it can actually make them worse. It can give them sort of practice in creating their own justifications. And that was one of the things that Tony's therapist in that show, Dr. Melfi, wrestled with in talking to her own therapist, because of course therapists have a therapist and on and on and on. And so you get all these interesting scenes of like this playing out over time, is her coming to grips with the fact that she is enabling this sociopath by like providing him therapy as a way to get better at being a sociopath. They getting better at like, mimicking human emotions and understanding this, like, and all that sort of stuff with the
so
psychology.
he's practicing his sociopathic behaviors with her.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like this weird push and pull where and that's where to me like the subject of personality disorders is such an interesting thing, and there's a lot of good arguments to be made about like the dangers of like labeling people, and I try to strike a note of caution when I do videos about that sort of thing. But on the other hand, it's so evident in a family like the Adelsons that they have something about them that is just alien to most people, right? Like most of us don't behave like this. Most of us don't solve our problems by hiring hitmen, so
No,
it
yeah.
just points to me like to it's pretty hard to argue against like the fact that like something like that exists, like whatever you want to call it, like personality disorders, like cluster B disorders, psychopathy,
Whatever
sociopathy.
label you put on
Yep.
it, it's yeah, it's
Yeah.
that's very correct. And honestly, like um, everyday life, we see people like them all the time. Dysfunctional families. We've lived with dysfunctional families, new people with dysfunctional families, but no one committed a crime. No one went there. The fact that they went there tells you that, yeah, there's
Mm.
absolutely something super off about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Matthew says, I hope Wendy never flips. I want to see her in prison forever. If I had to choose, I would rather her to go to prison than Donna.
That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, to me, that strikes again to the family dynamic, and there's this. It's such an odd cycle because, like, at some point, we all become adults and sort of possessed of our own behavior on some level, and
Mm.
so to me, like, the more culpable is usually the older one. But I mean, this is a hard one to puzzle out because I do see lots of good arguments for how Wendy was the catalyst. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, true crime wifey. Yeah, that it is. It's a very interesting thing, and I've read some counter studies, and so it's a complicated web. But I think to me, there's something about that just rings true. So,
Mm.
but yeah, it's something that definitely another good subject for a video.
Actually, I never heard about this until you mentioned it, that about talk therapy and sociopathy and stuff. It makes sense. It does. It makes sense. And I always thought about the narcissist, like you would never see a narcissist go to therapy. And even if they go to therapy, they go to show the therapist that they are better than them and that they have, you know, they wouldn't be able to acknowledge their problems, I think. But yeah, that makes so much sense that talk therapy can magnify, intensify sociopathy.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I'm so interested. If you ever do watch The Sopranos, we should talk about that too, because I would just be fascinated to know your perspective on it. Because the other thing that I think it does really well is sort of like puts the whole American project into context.
Mm.
Like it's very withering in its criticism of American society as of like the early 21st century, and I think it makes a lot of very valid criticisms of our whole
Oh, I'm
deal.
very interested in it. I will look it up and I will watch it. I will. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, it's a haul. It's like 7 seasons, but it's so good. Yeah, it's such a good show. I've watched it multiple times. So
You know, one of the greatest gifts that someone can give me is to suggest a show for me that I find really amusing. So thank you. I will check it out, of
yeah,
course.
and the other thing is like, if you have any suggestions, especially for like foreign language stuff, because that's actually something when I used to live in Portland, Oregon, there was an amazing independent movie store there called Movie Madness. I think it's still around, but it was just so cool because it had all these costumes and just huge sections on foreign films. So I'm always interested you just get such an interesting sense of like the visual language of a society by watching their films. So
That's right. Is it dubbed? Do you watch it dubbed?
yeah, generally, unless it's in Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can speak and understand Spanish?
It's been a while since I've spoken Spanish, but I can watch Spanish TV or read Spanish books. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, like
Katrina,
it's a
yeah,
struggle at first, but yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Katrina says the Adelsons are fascinating psychologically. I agree. Carol says she definitely used the burner Charlie. Did Katie did or she use WhatsApp and somebody forgot that they were connected to the cloud?
Oh, yeah. I think Carol may be referring to there was a recent remember that just recently there was some sort of document that was unsealed that talked about how another email account
Yeah,
was and but I think that the other thing is that like the WhatsApp app has like encryption in it.
yeah,
And so like it's encrypted end to end, but like if you happen to store your stuff in the cloud, I don't think I don't know how the encryption interacts with that because it's like a secondary storage, so I think that's maybe what Carol's getting at is that like because these folks weren't like technically sophisticated, they may have thought that they were being safe using WhatsApp when like their data might still be able to be retrieved, especially now 10 years later when, God knows what the military industrial complex superstate is capable of. So
yeah. But I think Wendy yeah, is very like aware of herself and what she should talk and what she shouldn't talk. When she was asked about the WhatsApp, what you're talking about on the stand, she said, "Yes, it's safer, but I know that everything can be attained." Like
mhm.
she knows that
Yeah.
as a lawyer, as an attorney, and as a person, I think she knew that. So I think she's very calculated in that way. Like she wouldn't be like Donna, reckless. Donna would talk bad about Dan in the emails. She would, she has so many evidence on her. Wendy didn't do that. That's what saved her until now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sure helped. Just every data point we have on the Adelsons, I think, sort of is just another, yeah, they're just gonna wrap themselves up. And I'm sorry, focus on Carol's comment here. The reason I think it may have been her phone in some cases in a burner and others, like a burner with Sigfredo Garcia. But what's up with Charlie and Katie? That morning she didn't use the phone from 10:46 until 11:22. Huh. Yeah, the whole phone thing is
Yeah, I'm not really, I don't know the details about this, honestly.
do you know what they're referring to when they say a burner? Do you know what that is? Yeah.
The phone,
Yeah.
right? Like
It's
case
like a
iPod?
phone that you don't put your name on.
Yeah.
And so I just sometimes I like to like check in because I know like a lot of slang is like it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, but you're
yeah.
right. Sometimes I don't, but this I know what is it.
Yeah.
It comes up a lot in so many cases.
But one thing I want to point out, because I always like to plug Grish's Wendy's television stuff, is that he has some amazing open source research onto like the WhatsApp stuff. So I would just like if you're interested in that and you haven't watched his stuff, Carol, I would give him a try because those Wendy's televisions just gets a lot into like the WhatsApp end of it. So
Yeah. Okay, let's move to the other one. Why didn't Wendy ask about her kids?
yeah,
It just bothers me to no end that when the police told her Danny has been shot, she didn't panic or get concerned and ask about her kids. Where were they? Are they okay? Even if you intelligently know they are at daycare, I think one of my first reactions would be to panic about my kids. That's very true.
I think that's something that especially parents pick up on, and yeah, it's just Wendy like had tried to come up with excuses. Like she, at some point, it came up in trial where Georgia asked her some question about like where the kids stayed the night before, and Wendy tried to kind of play dumb, but eventually she had to like Georgia elicited some answers from Wendy, like acknowledging like it was just another instance of Wendy saying these things that were like such obvious whoppers, and Georgia just sort of like let them sit
Yeah,
in the room. And I
yeah,
think anybody on the jury that was a parent or an uncle or everybody, all it's a human. It's just such a human instinct. So
right. Yeah, no, it's when I read that, I didn't think about it before, but when I read that, I was like, how did I miss this? Of course, that's the first thing that comes to your mind when there's a catastrophe. And I'm not saying only about Dan, like it's not any catastrophe, I think the parent would immediately his brain go to the kids if they
yep,
weren't present with him physically. At least are they okay?
yep. Where are they?
Yeah, did they know any did they
It's
feel anything? Did they know anything? She doesn't know anything. Like
exactly.
shouldn't
Is
ask.
somebody going to pick them up from school?
Yeah, right. Nothing. It was weird.
Yeah, just all those logistics. I mean, that's one of the things I think that I don't know because I'm not a parent, but like when I think when you are a parent, like that whole sort of routine of like, getting the kids in and out and like where are they all the time is always sort of front of mind. So the fact that it wasn't for Wendy is like, oof, it's very revealing. The other,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, nothing. It's just that in her case specifically, because they have a joint custody, it's she should be more worried, I think, because she doesn't
Yeah.
have 24 hours contact with them.
Yeah, gosh. And yeah, and that was another thing that I picked up on rewatching the Demko stuff is that one of the things she said that I hadn't heard really elsewhere was that Wendy would like ghost Dan when she didn't have the kids. So like when Dan would try to get in touch with Wendy to coordinate for logistics, like Wendy would just be off in the wind. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's just such a I think Wendy for whatever reason like doesn't like have that like maternal instinct or something, or at least not to the same degree. I don't know though. That's such a sort of thorny thing to say about somebody because it's so like it speaks so ill of them. But I just think that there's a lot of things that line up towards that perspective with Wendy that she just doesn't have that sort of bond with the kids for.
yeah,
And the other thing that Demko mentioned is that she had tried to help Wendy with like breastfeeding and stuff. So there's just like a number of things about that just seem like,
yeah.
yeah.
Jennifer's. Yeah, sorry. Continue, Leo.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask if have you ever looked into like the John Benet Ramsey case at all?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I just there's something I thought about too. Is that's another thing that to me is really there's a similar line of thinking in that case where the parents like never really like checked on Burke, the other kid. Um, because like there's John Bonet and her older brother Burke, and like
Yeah.
Burke, they just said like, oh, he was just asleep in his room the whole time. Like they didn't even check on him after John Bonet was found dead, or it was just like they had like that same sort of in like reaction where they you could just tell that like it just like slipped their mind because I and anyway, so I
No, that's right. That's also a good point. Yes, because it's very weird not to. When there's something so bad and horrific like that, it's
mhm.
so weird not to just check on people around you. And if they were your kids, ugh, that's very weird.
Mhm.
Jennifer is saying, I even check on my parents, my friends, if I hear or see something in the neighborhood happened. Of course, you would check on the kids' safety. Yes, I think
And
anyone would do that.
and to that point, Wendy actually got a voicemail from her real estate agent. Remember that she plays for ISOM, where the real estate agent's like, "Hey, friend,
Mm,
I just checking on you. I know this might sound crazy, but I saw some like traffic or some police tape over by your house. I just want to make sure you're okay." And it's like her
yeah,
real estate agent called her.
checked. Exactly.
Yeah.
And she didn't. Yes, yes,
Oof.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the last thread that
Yeah.
we had. Um, it's I wanted to touch on the Mica Miller case.
Oh yeah.
It's exploding now, and it's very interesting. Um, but I don't know if there's time. It's almost 2 hours
That's
in.
fine. I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind going a little bit longer if you want.
Okay.
I'm just yeah, I would like to talk about that case because I did check into it a little bit earlier today, and I thought it was like it, again, it seems like a case that highlights a niche of the world that needs highlighting in that whole sort of like Christian world of like pastors and the toxic positivity of a lot of that those mega churches. It's pretty yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about this for I don't know how many. Like it's a really good conversation to have. This conversation. So how about I show you the video of the pastor when, or should I maybe read an article about the case first? Let's
Either
see.
one. I think I probably have watched this clip, but it's such a good clip. I would love to watch it again, and I
Okay, let's
think the
do it.
audience might enjoy. But either way, I mean, I think both are good.
Okay, so to whomever that doesn't know about the case, Mica Miller was found dead at I cannot remember the name of the park. Let's see, just a second.
Yeah. Oh, and she was from a South Carolina pastor. Myrtle Beach TV. Okay, let's see here. Oh,
Okay, let's see. A medical examiner today ruled that South Carolina pastor's wife, Mica Miller, died from a self inflicted gunshot wound. Um, okay, the
at
ruling
Lumbee
comes.
River State Park. Sorry, Lumbee River State Park, I believe it
Oh,
is.
right. Okay. Yeah. So the ruling comes after the Robinson County Sheriff's Office announced it was investigating Miller's death. It also comes amid statements by Miller's family members that Miller's husband, John Paul Miller, which is the pastor of Solid Rock at Market Common in Myrtle Beach, was abusing Micah, and that Micah feared for her life. Micah stated to me on many occasions, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not by me, it was JP. Oh my God, this is so
Oh,
powerful. This statement is super powerful because that's exactly what happened. She ended up with a bullet in her head. And I don't know, the autopsy now, the medical examiner is saying now that it's consistent with self-indicted injury.
mm-hmm.
I cannot believe it. I cannot be convinced. I think there should be two, three, four medical examiners that do whatever he did. Um, yeah, Micah. Okay, similarly, Micah's brother Nathaniel stated in separate affidavit. Micah told me on numerous occasions that she feared John Paul and just wanted to escape him. you know what? Let's watch the video of her
Yeah.
ex-husband, which is John
Yeah.
Paul. Okay,
Yep.
let's see him. This is a video where he announced her death in his what do you call this? Like
His congregation in his
okay,
church. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a wild video.
Just a second. Let me put the
Sure. Yeah.
okay.
I'm just gonna I may make one point maybe while you set it up, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just like from an actuarial perspective, like, just in doing the math, basically, like if you get murdered and you're like recently were in a divorce, like the chances it was your ex-spouse are like so high. And then like you keep piling on stuff in this case where it's like, oh, there was like, she disclosed to friends, that he was planning on killing and all this sort of stuff. It just makes it so it's like vanishingly unlikely it was anyone else but that guy.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm ready. Let's do it.
I think it's a little low. I can't hear it.
Is it good?
Let's
Just
see
a
if the
second. Just a
audience can
second.
hear it. Sorry about that. But
Are you saying it's too loud?
no, I can't hear the audio on the video, so I just want to make sure that.
Oh, okay. Let's see then what's going
Can
on in here.
can
Just
you
a
guys
second.
hear in the chat at all? Just checking if you guys can hear in the chat. Also, kind of want to catch up on the chat as well.
Why?
Yeah, it's always something, and I think that one of the tricky things might be Facebook video was kind of odd, but I don't
Yeah.
know that would necessarily be it.
Um,
Maybe if you tried again,
okay,
and
let's try.
pot it up, like turn it up a little tiny bit, maybe, or if you
Okay, let's
can,
see.
like
Let
on
me
the,
try.
yeah, sorry.
Can you hear it?
I cannot.
No? Okay. Just a second. Just a second, okay?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm
I
just kind
think
of browsing through the comments. So yeah.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. True crime wifey confirming that if anything goes on in her neighborhood, she is locked in and curious. Wendy. Some interesting exchanges about the WhatsApp stuff. I'm not sure about that, Katrina. Let's see. Mon Geezy has a question. I don't think Wendy really loves those kids. Those kids are starting to be, we're starting to bond with Dan, and she could see it. She knew that they'd be daddy's boys, and rightfully so. I believe that added to Wendy's urgency. Yeah. And Amy Adler, too. The boys had just met Amy Adler, apparently, on Skype recently, Mon Geezy. So, yeah, that's a great point. How are we doing?
Just a second. I'm gonna
Sure. Yeah.
try something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll keep paging through. Carol. Oh, she loves Grace and Wendy's television. Oh, Grish and Wendy's television. In fact, I found out about it through you. I also love you, Noir. He showed the WhatsApp info. Then I went back to the interview. I've watched the trials. Yeah. Grish was able to find out some amazing stuff about the WhatsApp stuff by like looking at like the different versions of WhatsApp and like what kind of colors they used in the backgrounds, and yeah, amazing detective work in that stuff. Give it another shot here.
Okay, let's try another time, okay?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Is that you will continue to come to church.
Can you hear it?
I can hear it.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna from the beginning. Okay, just a second.
Yeah.
Today, instead, I'm going to have you stand up and I'm going to make an announcement. And after the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement here in the building, please, if you can. So y'all can stand to your feet. Before I make the announcement, I also want to say that my request to you is that you will continue to come to church and serve and give for the next little bit, because I don't want to I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few days, a few weeks, I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away, and yeah, it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina, and we're gonna have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can. Yeah, I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And she wasn't. Y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her. And so I'm sure there'll be more details to come. But just keep our family in your prayers. And I'm going to let Pastor Randall, Bishop, he can pray. I'll get him a microphone. He'll pray out. And if you have anything you want to share as well,
Okay.
Wow.
I don't know what to say.
I'm thinking
There's a
that,
word that Donna used for Dan, made Charlie chuckle in the trial, laughing. Do you know it? The word that she used?
fucker.
Yes. I would want to use it for this this guy. What? Who does that? That's very bizarre. She wasn't well mentally. Who says that?
There's like so many things in there. It just made me. I'm in content mode. My brain is right now, so I'm like, oh, that would be. I could make a great video on this. But the first thing that I thought of is like, how presumptuous of this asshole to be like, y'all stand up now. Y'all keep me in your
On
prayers.
your
You do this. You do that. You know.
That's, and also like the way he said it, it felt like as if, you know, when you are with your family, best friends, and you did something horrible, and then you come to them and you're like, okay, I'm going to say something to you. Don't comment. Don't say anything. Don't judge.
Don't be
Just
mad at me.
exactly. Listen and walk away. That's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
I want you to know who does that. Don't talk about it. Why don't talk about
So many demands in
was
there, and but he was
mentally
what a skill. I mean, like the amount of like skill that it takes to be able to get up there and pull. I mean, like he didn't. Obviously, I think that there's some flaws with his presentation, shall we say? But like, just to the chutzpah to be able to get up there and like reel that off. I mean, I could never do that. I mean, I just don't have it in me to. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's awful. Oh my God. I cannot accept the medical examiner result. I'm sorry, but I cannot accept it. This woman, I saw some of her videos. She's shining light from her face.
Yeah.
There's also text messages between her and someone else, her friend or her sister, planning on her next life. And she was excited about it. She was telling her that she's excited about her new life. She's happy that she's starting a new life. There's no way that she was going to do that to herself.
No.
I don't think there's any way that she would do it. The fact that he's using this, like she wasn't good mentally, the gaslighting, it really bothers me. It really triggers me, the way he's doing it. Let's see, what else do we have on them?
Did they
Yeah.
have kids? I didn't see that in the article. Did they have kids? No.
No, they don't. He has kids.
Oh, but
They
she
were,
doesn't.
yeah, she was
Okay.
their stepmom.
Okay, gotcha. That's still, I mean, you'd figure that would factor into her decision regardless, you know, that those kids need a mom. So,
Right.
or at least I'm sure she had some role in their life. But like you said, I watched a clip that she did that was on a channel that I found, and she did seem like such a warm person on some level, but also like,
Oh my God.
you know, obviously had some of that, the overlay of that the toxic kind of Christian programming that
Yes, but she's, I don't know, she's very sweet. That's how I felt when I looked at her, you know.
Yep.
So there's an affidavit here that I can read or you can read, and there's also okay, let's see what we can do. Transcript. What is this? On April 23rd, 2024, 5 days before her death, a temporary hearing date was set for Mica and JP's divorce, June 5th. Mica was also trying to get a no contact order in place. Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, a little bit, because I don't want to have, I'm taking a little bit of break and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few. Oh, so that's the pastor talking. Days, a few weeks, I don't know. I got a call last night. My wife has passed. away. Yeah, it was self-induced, and it was. Oh, so this is the transcript that we just watched.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to note that I just thought of is at the point where he says like my wife just passed away, and after that there's like an audience reaction. It's hard to tell if the audience reacts, but I'm assuming that they did, because afterwards he kind of goes, he has like a little patter where he goes, yeah,
Yeah,
he
I
said that,
heard this.
yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, it's almost like something that like a stand-up comedian or somebody would it's like an entertainment thing. I'm sure he guys it like as like a tick from being a pastor, because there's like a lot of that sort of segue thing, or like words of emphasis where you say, like right or yeah or that sort of stuff. But it was just like, it's very odd. And the whole thing also reminded me of the Alec Murdaugh a little bit, in his studied crying, like you could kind
Yeah.
of hear his voice catch, and it's almost as if he had practiced it, because it didn't quite ring naturally to me. But that could also just be my own bias, like because we're watching this under pretty suggestive conditions. But anyway.
But no, you're right. He has a motivational, like as if he's saying a motivational speech or a self-help speech. Like they say,
Yep.
right or yeah or what? Like they say these words. Yes, you're right.
Yep. Very
Such a weird
effective
man.
technique to get people to agree with you, and something that a lot of good attorneys do. It's best used sparingly, but like when you use those sort of things, like it really sort of draws people in, and it's like there's a natural human tendency to like want to agree with.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking of going to her Facebook because she has her videos over
Yeah,
there.
sure. I could page through the comments if you want to
Yeah.
look
Okay.
around. Carol saying, my phone is not hearing me correctly okay, got you. So you're doing text to speech. Gotcha. Yeah, not a problem. I'm able to get like 95% of it. So no problem, Carol. Enforcement is law enforcement. Okay, got the. Thank you guys. Great chatting with you. Great show. Thank you, Carol. I really appreciate all the very thoughtful comments, and everybody. Great comments. Not a bad comment in the bunch. I mean, what a great community already.
It is very. I love this community. I love it.
Yeah. Mongeezy checking in saying, I think law enforcement has the goods on Wendy. I love that term, the goods. Either either through her phone or the iCloud or Charlie Katie, for any number of ways, from Donna, who just can't shut her yapper. Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things that I'm always trying to like find little breadcrumbs about, is like just kind of speculating what sort of stuff the law enforcement might be holding back on Wendy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's new things we're gonna see coming to Donna's trial. That's how I feel, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is her Facebook, Mica Miller, Mica Acacia. Seek justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God, Mica. Seek justice. Yes, seek justice. Let's seek justice for Mica. She deserves justice. When terrible, terrible, terrible things happen to you, you all know what I'm talking about. RPF, resting peace face. So we know that this is something terrible happened to her here. Just a second, I want to see the videos.
Yeah, it looks like, I wonder like how because it seems like that one post had like a ton of likes on it. It might be like after the fact, like after she got
Yeah.
murdered, people went and found it. So I wonder like how many normal likes and followers she usually had, because it's not clear. I mean, it seems like she has a pretty big social media presence. But
Yeah, I think she shares on Facebook because there's this
But see here,
content.
if we get down here, like to her older stuff, there's like 21 likes, as opposed to like the newer stuff, which is the stuff that people are like, that are just coming in off the internet or seeing. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that like she had a smaller presence before, because that's one of the weird things about, true crime cases that get into the media, is like there's like this weird observer effect, where like the media and everybody like following the story has this effect on all of the evidence. Like her Facebook profile has been irrevocably changed by all the new people coming in and like commenting and liking it. So it's like you have to kind of look at like an older archive, or if you can use like the Wayback Machine. I don't know if that works for Facebook, but it's like it's so hard to like kind of deconstruct like what it was of the time. I guess you could look at timestamps or something, but anyway.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. So this is a video of her. Just a second. Let me see. Thank God for the ability and pushes. We have to work. Okay, I don't want that. I want something. Okay, this is the one that I want.
So today my heart's a little heavy. I've had a lot of women that have reached out to me about situations of abuse. And I just want to tell you what a lot of people have told me lately and reminded me, because I think I forgot. I knew, but I pushed it in the back of my head just because of my situation. But you are the bride of Christ. Before anybody else's bride, male or female, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Abuse is abuse. And you are the bride of Christ. And my Bible says that he took all the abuse you could think of for you so that you didn't have to live that life of slavery and bondage and pain. Jesus took it all for you. So you don't have to stay in a abusive relationship, whether that's sexual, whether that's somebody forcing you to take illegal drugs or alcohol abuse or physical abuse, psychological abuse, making you think that this is all your fault, or you're a bad mom, or you're a bad wife, or you're a bad husband, or you're not giving it your all when you know you are. God hates divorce, but why? According to everybody I've asked and the scriptures that I've found, it's because it hurts people. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that? So I want to remind you, like a bunch of people have been reminding me lately, that I'm God's bride first. And even an earthly spouse who's a good spouse, when they know that their bride is being hurt, just imagine what an earthly spouse does. What do you think your heavenly spouse does when you're the bride of Christ and he sees his bride going through abuse and hurt? What do you think he thinks about that? So, encouragement in all this is, you are the bride of Christ first before anybody else's. And he's got you. And he sees you. And he loves you.
Oh my God. Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
The programming is just so strong. It seems like, like so.
She said everything that we need to know. But there's a thing that she said, like forcing you to take illegal drugs.
Yeah, that I raised my eyebrows to that too. It was like, where did that come from?
And she did a face after it, as if this is what's happening to her. That's how I understood it, at least.
That I took the same thing from it. It was like, it was such a random example that it wouldn't be something that you would, I don't, yeah, it struck me the same way. I was gonna, yeah.
How would something do that? How would someone do that to you? Force you to take illegal drugs?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to think about physically,
Yeah.
how can it happen?
Oh, you know what? Well, maybe, what her husband during his little speech said something about how her medicine was hard to find.
Mm.
So like maybe he was like telling her that some kind of illegal drug would help her. Like maybe, I don't know what that would be though. Like uppers or downers. It doesn't seem like she's on either of those. Maybe she was
No.
on like prescriptions, like illegal prescriptions, because prescription stuff can be illegal, and a lot of people buy like fake prescription pills, but it just doesn't seem like she's on that quite. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
What other illegal drugs are there? I don't know.
It was a weird comment, but the way I thought about it was, if someone forces you to take illegal drugs, couldn't they force you to kill yourself? Or like, okay, this is what I think. And this is just speculation, pure speculation. I think that he framed her as if she did it herself. I'm just trying to think about a physical way of doing it. How would he?
Well, I mean, one of the great way to do it would be to drug somebody and then, put their body in the position of like how they would actually commit suicide and then pull the trigger for it. And that was the first thing I thought of, is that like maybe he dosed her on, I don't know, fentanyl or some sort of exotic drug that would like knock her out, and then sort of just like, propped her body up in the
Yeah,
position, or, whatever. I mean, that's just one
I
possible.
think this is the only way it makes sense. I mean, the only way that we can think of, yeah, he drugged her maybe and then put the gun in her hand and then pressed with her or
Yep.
some. It seems unlikely, but it can like, yeah, I can see it happening if someone is as like him, like this guy. It wouldn't be strange for him to do that.
Yeah, she's under. I mean, it seems like she's under some sort of coercive control by this guy, and so who knows, like what he could have talked her into. Like, just as one possible scenario, he might have done, like something like made her play Russian roulette with an empty gun a bunch in the past, but this time it was loaded. That type of shit. Where like,
Yeah,
who the fuck knows? But it's like I had the exact same instinct that you did. That it just seemed like he found some way to fabricate the scene to look like
yeah,
a suicide.
yeah. He looks to me sadistic. Like, there is criminals, there is murderers, but he looks to me as a sadistic person. That's how he gives me the vibe.
Mhm.
But yeah, someone that forces someone to. She said also bondage, so maybe there's part of it.
I think that was a biblical reference, like the slaves in Egypt getting out of
Oh,
bondage or something. I think so. I don't know though, because I don't know my Bible that well, because I never went to church. But that was, I think, the reference. Although maybe somebody in the comments that knows the
yeah.
good book a little bit
Please,
better might be able
someone
to.
Christian that read the Bible, tell us.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it makes sense what you said, what you just said. Yes, it makes a lot of sense, of course.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
awesome! Looks like you got a super sticker. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Oh my God, thank you so much. That's very nice of you. Thank you.
True Crime Rifey had a question. Was Pastor anywhere near where she was found? Do we know the distance of where he was supposedly and where she was found? That's a great question. Yeah,
The thing
what's
is,
his
we don't
alibi?
know anything yet,
Yeah.
because the police is still investigating, and they're not, like, they didn't even
Hmm.
do what do you call this?
Autopsy or
No, like uh, conference, or like talked about it in public,
oh, okay. Yeah.
like a
Yeah,
meeting or
they
whatever.
haven't. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I'm waiting for this impatiently to happen.
Hmm.
What else I wanted to say about this? Did you have anything to say more about this? Let's see. What else?
Um
Is there
I did
anything you wanna, like a video or an article or whatever you wanna share?
not I did have one thing that I was lingering in my head, but I think I might have lost it. But that is definitely a case that I want to follow. I mean, that video is all the video that I've seen of the pastor and also of Micah is just so compelling. I mean, you get such a sense of her. Um, but yeah, I am.
You know, when you sometimes um, are upset and you feel like there's a rock in here in your throat,
Yeah.
and it makes you uncomfortable to talk as if you are gonna cry. That's how it felt that she was experiencing. That's how it
Mm.
felt.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I was actually, what I think what I was actually going to say is that the whole thing about like if he was putting her on drugs, this is like an extreme form of control,
Mhm.
and it's an even more extreme form would be to kill somebody because you can't possess her. I mean, that's sort of, I think, what a lot about the domestic violence is. There's a whole way of looking at it. People that study it call it the cycle of power and control,
Mhm.
and it's just like the domestic violence relationships are more apt to happen when there's an imbalance of power between the two parties.
Mm.
So like I don't know if she worked or like what their whole financial situation is, but all that sort of stuff is like really a big part of like the whole stew of what makes domestic violence, such a thorny problem.
So I have the incident report that she did back in the day. I'm gonna share it. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
How about we?
Great. Yeah, it's redacted. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. On 3/11/2024, HCPD officers were dispatched to Margarita DR in the Myrtle Beach area of Horry County for a report of a razor blade being placed in her tire at the location of Springmaid. Spoke with the V1, who stated that this is the second time a razor has deflated her tire in the last week. V1 stated that she was at Springmaid Pier around 1:30. She was leaving. She heard a pop and noticed that a piece of metal was protruding from her tire. V1 metal piece was found that the metal was a tire deflation device that can be purchased online. Oh, he purchased a specific thing for it.
Wow.
V1 believes S1 may have placed or had the item placed in her tire. She had noticed strange activity and what she believes as people following or watching her.
Wow.
V1 stated that S1 has a history of similar actions against her. Evidence was not sufficient to prove that S1 is placed the razor a device, nothing further. So this is the first incident.
What's really, I was just thinking of there and reading that is it's sort of a typical of sometimes like when domestic abusers like gaslight their victims, they make them doubt their own senses.
Yeah.
And so like it really like makes it such a thorny issue for law enforcement, because like in reading this, you can see how law enforcement might think that like she was just like paranoid or, whatever, any number of different scenarios. Of course, knowing what we know now, it certainly reads very differently, but there's just like a number of things in this report that just make me feel like, yeah, this sort of stuff doesn't happen and then like a murder happens later unless there's just like the biggest coincidence ever. I mean, especially this close. This was just in March, so like, less than 2 months ago. So and
Yeah.
it happened before that too. So it's so typical of domestic violence shit, like screwing with each other's cars. I mean, it's like a cliche for that reason, like keying your ex-boyfriend's car, like,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the second incident was on 3/11/2024. I responded to address, which is the East Coast Honda dealership in the Myrtle Beach section of Horry County, in reference to a harassment. Upon my arrival, I spoke with the victim, which advised she was just out with one of our officers getting a report for an unknown person splashing her tires. She advised the officer helped her change her tire, and then she went to the gas station for gas, and then straight to East Coast Honda to get her tire fixed. She advised him to go away. She does not want to talk, and then when she pulled her phone out to record, he sped off. The victim then leaves and goes to East Coast Honda, and the suspect showed up again. While I was out with the victim, she received a no-caller ID call, which ended up being the suspect. The suspect was advised that the victim does not want any further contact, and if he proceeds, then warrants may possibly be written up. The suspect acknowledged the advisory by saying, okay. The victim advised me that she was afraid for her life. She also advised she blocks his numbers and still gets calls and texts from him on other numbers after clearing the call and my departure. Oh my God. What a man.
The one thing I was just thinking about is like the police may be like indicating that this guy is not a suspect to kind of give him like a false sense of security or something. So there may be other stuff happening behind the scene, I mean,
Right.
but because to me, like when I see this, like having worked in criminal law for a long time, I mean, this is like classic domestic violence abuser stuff, like all of this stuff, the caller, the harassment, it's like he's obsessed with her, and
Yeah.
and it's like, if it's just typical, it's just so, yeah,
I want to
just,
see him in shackles so bad.
yeah.
And if it doesn't happen, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I really want to see him, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hurting me physically seeing her. It's too much. And I have this screenshot that I want to share. So I found this on Facebook. Okay, this is him, the pastor. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Micah. I hope you are doing well. I'm ready to be done and move on and heal and find a first lady who won't treat me the way you are. I really hope you do great things. I was willing to do anything. I even had the amazing desire to have kids since you're not on meds. Can he stop talking about her meds? And I want to apologize for the flowers and fruit. It was already paid for to last until your birthday. Feel free to give it all away. Just like a child, just like my ex-boyfriends, you break up with them and they're like, "Oh, give me your my stuff back." I
Yep.
sent that to you before I found out all about all the things that I have recently found out about you and what you've done, and you discussed me. So please, let's meet soon and be divorced and let this nightmare be over for me. For me, I'm enjoying all the Africa missions.
Oh wow.
Ah, man.
Yes. You know what's so crazy about this
Mm,
is I have like a video idea that I've been working on in the can for a while
yeah.
that has to do with two different girls that I went to high school with.
Mm,
And they both were like the kind of people that would like advertise on Facebook that they were going over to Africa to do missions.
mm-hmm.
And around the same time as they were doing that, they both ended up getting into trouble for like stealing money. I don't want to be too specific here, but it's like
Yeah.
um there's some really weird like savior complex thing with like people that go to Africa. It's such a, and I've read really interesting articles about like some of the like real terrible people that go over there, and like again it's almost like the whole Wendy thing where they like sort of wrap themselves in this, you know, trying to like look like a really good person when in reality they're like rotten to the core. It's so
Yeah.
crazy. It's like the people that like want to go, I don't know. It's like such a naive instinct, I think, on some level. It's like for people that really haven't been hit in the face by the world to think that, like, I'm going to go over to Africa and make a big difference. And I'm not saying that, like, that sort of thing isn't, you
Doesn't
know, there,
happen. It
yeah,
does.
yeah, there's lots of, you know, good
Good.
people that do good
Yeah.
works, but it's like there's just a certain segment of that thing that they're like, I don't know, they're like a wolf in sheep's clothing or something, you know.
Absolutely. And this pisses me off so much. The hypocrisy that people live in. So I'm sure that there are people that go there and help and everything, and they are good in their hearts, and the purpose of doing it is for the greater good and not for
Yep.
being malignant. But I'm sure that this is one of the, what do they call it? White savior.
Yep. White savior complex. Yep.
I'm sure this is one of them. Oh my God. The guy is like typical, I don't know what to call him, but like everything about him says that he's, I don't know. I'm enjoying all the Africa missions and Pastor Jumba, and all the pastors' wives are so excited for what we're doing. We expect 120 kids our first semester. Why are you telling her all of this when you are that disgusted of her? I have about 10 to 12 people going this time, including Kristen and Tom Winslow and Becca and Jonathan, etc. And I need to move on as soon as possible. I need a woman who would respect me and love me and be worthy of all that being a first lady is about. Oh my God, why is he saying first lady?
Well, that's like the term, like, you know, for like the president's wife, right? The
I
first
know,
lady.
but
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's
why is he
yeah,
using it?
it's
Does he think of
his
himself as,
self-image. Yes, I think, right? He thinks of himself as like such an important dude that, like, you know, you're gonna be my number two. I don't know. That
yeah,
is such a
that's
wild framing.
first lady. He mentioned it twice. First
Twice.
lady. Oh
Yep.
my God. G-
Can't even
Get a
write it
life.
off as
What
a
is this?
mistake. Yeah.
And also, what did I want to say about this?
Mm.
I had the
Yeah.
amazing desire to have kids. Yeah, say,
Oh, I
Leo.
was just gonna say this really makes me want to make a video on this case because it's a fascinating. There's a fascinating issues to explore. You know.
Yeah, it is a very, my God, it's gonna be, I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, terrible person, terrible person. Okay, what else? What else? Let's see some comments.
Oh, Carol had a comment about her brother being a youth pastor. That's interesting.
Which one? Let me see which
Oh,
one.
it's I'm kind of scrolled up a bit, but Carol had a comment where she says let's see, he says she was in North Carolina, but her memorial is at the Rock Bottom in Myrtle Beach. Oh, wait, no, it's actually down a little bit. It's tragic, and my brother was a youth pastor. He is no longer. It's a couple down, I think, from there. He's a man of God. When he told me about their dog dying, he made sure I was sitting down. So, yeah, I mean, I would say the thing that I thought was interesting, Carol, is you mentioned that he had it sounds like your brother had some sort of passing acquaintance, or he ran into Lil Wayne when Lil Wayne was having his seizure problems. Lil Wayne is a rapper who's one of the great rappers of all time, and that's interesting that he was there for. Lil Wayne had an episode where he had seizures and almost died, and I think Carol is saying that her brother may have had some involvement in that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. She was a paranoid schizophrenic, therefore doing things that would make you question your sanity. He's gonna get caught. Trust me, don't mock life. That's what I want. I want him to get caught. Jennifer Ray, the power and control wheel had 8 aspects, all of which are detrimental on their own, but abusers use several of them depending upon the type of abuser.
I think what True Crime Wifey's referencing here is there's like a visual that's used in for a lot of people that work in domestic violence, and it's like a literal wheel of power control with like these 8 different panels that describe parts of the soup of power and control. It's a very effective visual that you'll see in like a lot of domestic violence education material.
Oh, power
Anyway.
and control wheel. Yeah, I see it now. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept.
Oh, nice. Okay, nice. I like that. Let's see it.
It helped a lot for me to understand it, because I worked with I worked on like thousands of criminal cases, so I've worked on like literally hundreds and hundreds of domestic violence cases, and it's like, yep, that's exact one. Yep.
So it's like physical violence, sexual, and then it goes down to
Intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation. All these are hallmarks. Isolating. I mean, that's all. Yeah. I mean, when you read this, it like makes so much sense. I think if you've ever seen it up close, especially,
yeah,
children. Yep. Anyway.
using male privilege, of course.
Yeah.
The first lady, minimizing, denying, and blaming. Of course,
Yes.
he did that.
Yeah.
He blamed her for so many things, like she wouldn't take her meds, and using
You know, it'd
isolation.
be a good video idea for you
Yeah,
to go through the wheel of power and control in this
right.
case and use examples for each one, because
Yeah,
you just did a great one for the male privilege one. I mean, you just nailed that one, but if you do find 7 more examples for the other
I
spot,
can.
yeah, I'm sure you can. I mean, each one of them, there's like tons of examples in this case, I'm
Exactly.
sure. Yep.
You don't have to look so much with this
But this
guy.
is it has like all of the hallmarks, and so even if you don't touch all 8 pieces of the wheel, like I'm sure you'll easily get 6 or 7.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
right.
just looking at these, I think it's got to be all 8, because I'm not sure about the economic abuse, but coercion and threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation, male privilege, children, the stepchildren maybe, so that's questionable. Minimizing, denying, blaming, yes. So like 6 out of 8 for sure, and the other 2, like, we have a question mark, but probably.
Yeah, children only because they don't have their own children.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
his children, and she was their stepmom, but we don't know the relationship. How was it with them?
Exactly, but he could have easily used them to be like, you need to be here for any number of different ways,
Yeah, there's so
or
many different ways of using your kids for, yeah, absolutely. But man, I can't wait for more information about this case. I'm very intrigued,
yeah,
and of course, I'm praying for her family
yeah.
to I don't know. It's very hard. It's very hard. I hope that justice will eventually happen to Micah, and I think we're gonna cover this case more in the upcoming days, right?
I think so. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm kind of hooked now. I need to kind of unpack some stuff because I just I see a lot of really interesting footage that I think you can make some interesting content with, and hopefully try to act as like a countervailing force against the negative of this case by trying to again find a lesson in it. Trying to find
Yeah.
something positive to bring out of this tragedy.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I think we're done.
Yeah, I think we're pretty. I need to eat here pretty soon. I'm
Sorry.
starving. But
Sorry, Leo.
that was like that. That went so quickly and smoothly. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just extremely pleased that we
Yeah. Thank you,
completed
Leo,
our
for coming over to this live stream. Thank you for your time and everything. And for the chat. Thank you everyone for
great chat.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great chat. Yeah. Okay, then I think we're done. Good night, everyone, and I hope you liked this live stream and see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.